G'day, Vermin Lords, AOS Coach here, and guess what? We have a special episode. We are talking all things Skaven, and you're like, wait a second, you have done like a million Battletome reviews in 2023. Why on earth are you talking Skaven? Because they haven't had a new Battletome. Guess what? I've secured a very special guest. It's Keiran Coates, who was the runner-up into the Australian Age of Sigmar Masters, who took Skaven not only through the competitive season and earned his place in the top of the pile of Australia, but also took them to the grand final. Unfortunately, you did go down to Dave Kerr, who is the now three times Australian Master, so someone to have no losing to on the top table. I have heard a rumor that you may be the incarnate of Thanquil as well. I can't confirm yet. Maybe in the next couple of hours, we'll get a better understanding. But Keiran, welcome. And we are going to talk Skaven, talk about almost like revisit the faction. Where are they currently at? What are you currently doing to get success at a GT level and at a Masters level? And what have you kind of learnt along the way? Because we have had a whole bunch of new books, and are the thing that we thought were good in the old book, or sorry, in the last season, is it still good, or is there stuff down now that you're looking at with Squigs and KO and like all the things that are rising in the meta? Are there things we should revisit? But I'm going to shut up and welcome you. Say g'day and introduce yourself.
Oh yeah, hi everyone. Definitely not thankful. Probably more of a Icket Claw or the Urat. 75% of the time it works, 25% of the time you blow yourself up and pick up the pieces and restart. So, uh, yeah, look, great to be here. As most of you may or may not know, I just tend to play Skaven. I'm a hardcore Skaven fanatic. It is the one and only true army that I play. So yeah, Skaven all the way to the top, and probably will continue with just Skaven. It's a great book. There's a ton of variety, and never get bored of it.
It is such a funny faction. Skaven is one of those armies, and I love them because they go back to the olden days, right? You're
Mm.
stealing my cheese as an Empire player. You're still annoying me to this day. Thankwall is still an absolute beat house, and Skaven does what Skaven does. And it's really the army that rewards the tacticians, right? You're not Iron Jaws. You don't walk up the board and smash. You are popping out of your no holes. You know, skitter leaping, you are shooting me off the board, you're like a wonderful Warstone crack addict shooting up, and either it works amazingly. I had this game, I'll never forget it. I had this game at Bathurst GT last year where my first game was against Skaven, and the dude's like, look, this game's going to end really quickly. Now, I don't know if it's going to be you getting tabled or I'm getting tabled. All I know is that we're going to have a lot of fun. And he was true to his word. And I'll never forget his little rattling team deleting my Celestant Prime because he whiffed all the attacks.
Yeah,
So whiffed all the diff saves.
yeah. Now look, Rattling Guns are a hell of a unit. Back in the old book, they were the cornerstone of my list, and possibly my favorite model in all of Skaven. I don't use them right now, but I'm definitely keen to put my Rattling Guns back on the table. They were. There's something funny about just rats with miniguns just popping out of stuff and just murdering in a in a frenzy.
It's so funny. And they're what, 60 odd points. It's just like if they pop, who cares? If they slap incredibly hard. And that's the kind of thing with Skaven. You just lean into the craziness and you just have a good time. And you're like a destruction army where the potential is off the charts, but the likelihood of hitting your potential is so random that you can't rely on it.
Yeah, for sure. Look, and I think probably and we'll get further into this after, but probably the hardest part of Skaven is there is definitely a risk reward ratio with Skaven right through with each unit, and a lot of Skaven is trying to understand when do you take the risk for the reward ratio, and when is it not worth it? And it's actually quite hard to look at different because every time you're playing a new opponent, there's a whole new map in front of you, and the question is analyzing the math quickly. If I do this stupid play that's 30% chance it'll win me the game, 70% chance it won't. Is that a viable thing to do right now? Or do I wait to try to bump those odds higher or lower as the game goes? And then at some point, you just need to pull the trigger and just let the flares run wild. And if the math's in your favor, then hopefully you win. And if the math's not, then there's another round coming up after. So just get ready.
And that's really interesting thinking, because whenever you talk or you listen to a tournament player, whether it's on my channel, in a Discord, on another person's channel, you always hear that tournament players hate the gamble. They hate, like, if you look at Skaven, Squig players, for example, you rarely used to see Squigs do really well competitively until this particular book, where they reduce the amount of randomness. Like you know, I used to do like 3d6 on my move, and yeah, I could do 18, but I also could do 3. And when I
Yeah.
roll those 3 or that 5, it can really neuter my strategy. So I will be definitely curious to hear why you not only took these to a competitive tournament, but then actually took it to the Masters, and how you embrace that randomness.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, random isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's random for me, but it's random for you as well. And I think Skaven is also an army where if you're trying to just play the most, I think there's a quote I heard a while back. There's like you pay a high price for certainty. This was to do with investing in financial odds, nothing to do with Warhammer, but you do pay a high price for certainty. And one of the things is when you're going into great players will know how to analyze your odds just as well as you can analyze their odds. But if my odds are random and you're going against really good players who are used to a clean, structured fight, it's actually very hard for them to judge what you're going to do because there's such a wide scope and they can't deal with that random variability factor that just can throw a game completely out of their fashion. So, yeah.
I don't know if your opponent's the same, but when I used to play Gloomspite Gits at their peak randomness, right? I always
Mm.
found people would always calculate their decisions based off worst case scenario. So that 3d6 chart, so 3d6 move, they would always factor in 18. And while that's viable, they would make decisions off that. And I knew based on the amount of games that I've played, what the likelihood of the maths and actually doing the thing. But how do you see that randomness playing out, and how do you think about it as a Skaven player?
Okay, so as a Skaven player, and we'll get more into the particulars of the way
Absolutely.
that I tend to play, but using something like a triple master clan ability, you can get your deep strikes to about a 65 to 75% chance of hitting when you're coming out of a deep strike. Now, the reason why that's important is you can put into your opponent's head that if they leave a bubble open, more often than not, I'm going to smack you off the table. Now, I may not smack you off the table. There is a chance that you can go forwards and I'm just going to roll horribly and you're going to win. But the fact that I can more often than not do it is really the key. So I think this is where we're talking about like the random factor. If you can make your random from good to amazing, that's the perfect type of random. The bad type of random is when it's going from your best case random is okay and your worst case random is terrible. And it's about sort of controlling that randomness as well as you were saying. Like, I mean, what you were saying about the movement, probably the most common Skaven example you get is where you get lists with triple warp lightning cannon. Like, it can not only can it not do no mortal wounds, you can kill yourself, or you can do 36 mortal wounds to your opponent. And because the opponent has to assume that their key piece, if it goes into range, it will die, it's not even about you doing the damage. It's the threat that if they do go into range, that you'll do that damage that stops them coming in the first place. Similar to, again, as I was giving the example before, my PCBs that are in Deep Strike, because they know that at any time, if they break that bubble, I'm going to come out of Deep Strike. Even if I've got the chance to bring them down, I normally don't bring them down until generally turn 3, because forcing them to stay in a bubble with that random 65% chance I'm just going to come into the back lines and murder you forces them to play a clean fight. And if you have to play a clean fight into 3 unclean versions of clan rats that are 32 inches long lines, which we'll get into later as a particular piece of Skaven tech, I'm happy to play a clean fight. I got Death Frenzy, I got chaff lines, I got teleports and shooting over the top. I can play the clean fight very well. And if we get into a melee punch on, we'll win. The times where I tend to struggle is where I have to play an unclean fight, i.e., things like Lumineth, things like KO, things that Sylvaneth that can just blow you off from the other side of the table. Things like this are the armies that really Skaven does struggle against, where you can't force them into a clean fight where they have to hit the clan rat screens.
Yeah. All right. And we will talk about your list as well. Just quickly, we will bring up the list and I'll get to your thinking around the list and how you prepared it. And obviously, we are playing in the current season. So it's very much going to be focused around the Galatian veterans, but also we can share some wisdom around what it might look like in the future, and who knows what the new General's Handbook's going to be thinking. But why Skaven? Let's go back for a second. And
Yep.
you said you always play Skaven. Why
Yeah.
Skaven? Why do you commit to Skaven? And why did you take it to the premier tournament in Australia to crown the master?
Yeah. Okay. So why Skaven's that's a question that goes back over a decade to little Keiran as a 13-year-old going into the old Games Workshop. And I was playing Lord of the Rings at the time. I'm not sure if you recall, they used to have those the magazines that would get at like the Australia Post, like for $2 you get a Lord of the Rings figurine. I'd play my older brother, and he would always have, in hindsight, he would have like a 1,500 point army against my 200 points of goblins, and I'm like, haha, he wins again. I'm like, how do you win this game? He's so good. He's a master. um, so I used to play. I used to do Lord of the Rings to start with, and then eventually I just wanted to try a new game. At the time, the person at the shop gave me a little hint. He said, "Oh, by the way, there's this thing coming out called Island of Blood." I'm like, "Well, that sounds pretty cool." Had a friend of mine who loves his elves, and so we ended up splitting. We didn't even split a box of Island of Blood because back in the day, you really needed the physical book because apps didn't exist. So we ended up getting 2 Islands of Blood. I took all the Skaven, he took all the elves. And then someone else wanted elves, so he split one with me, and I took all of his Skaven. And suddenly I've got a box of like 400 clan rats and ogres, and like just the whole horde's there. um,
I actually hope they bring that box back because you've got Old World coming soon, and I could see that as a cheeky way to get people back into fantasy battles. Re-release a couple of those boxes because that was such a good one. By the way, Games Workshop, please bring it back and please make the Rat Ogres the one from that box. Like, I'm not a fan of the current Rat Ogres. The Isle of Blood Rat Ogres are just so much better.
It was a great box. I do miss the one of my favorite units back then was the Poison Wind Mortar, which is like one of the only Skaven units to really get removed from that era. But I would if I had Poison Wind Mortars now, I would put them back in my list because that would just help so much with those ranged castles. It is a great piece. And the randomness back in fantasy was people think Skaven was random in AOS. In fantasy, it was wild.
Like, to give you an example, like, at least from my side as the goblin side, the fanatics used to get released, I think, from the back of a unit, and they would
Hmm.
charge through the current unit of goblins. So they'd actually impact and actually do damage to your own unit before doing damage to your own. And I remember the craziness of Doom Wheels and Skaven magic, and it was wild. So yeah,
Yeah.
currently Age of Sigmar is much more contained compared to the old fantasy battle Skaven.
For sure. But yeah, and so I that was a very long time ago. And what happened was last Christmas I went to go visit my parents in Sydney, and my mom was like, "Oh, I've got this box of stupid rats that you've had here for like 10 years. It's in a garage. There's nothing happened to it." And my mom, she wanted to throw it out. And I actually said, "No, no, no. Look, I'll bring it back to Melbourne. Let me see, and it's all on squares." I brought it back, and then I went to go sell it on eBay, and I was like, I wonder what the tournament scene's looking like these days.
Nice.
I couldn't sell the army, and then interesting enough, so Border War last year was my first GT, and so this was sort of the 1 year anniversary they just had last week of GT. So and then I had one short 1 day before it, and yeah, and so that's kind of how I got back into it. I was like, you know what, these rats were too fun. And so I just converted them up. I had to get a few new models, and I was good to go. Because the great thing about Skaven was my army from the bloody like the 2000s is somehow still legal. Nothing's changed. It's all the same
because
models.
because your models haven't been updated.
So I've still got the latest. I've still got the latest sculpts.
Oh my gosh. I'm not going to go down that route because it actually hurts me. And I was joking to someone the other day because Beast of Chaos got a whole bunch of new models through 40k Kill Team, and I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, maybe 40k Skaven will come out and you get a whole bunch of new kits from that, and like people just like grumble. But
I
also, I'd actually be really happy for new Skaven models.
I I want new Skaven models, but I would almost be sad to see like the old Skaven models like phasing out. There is something almost so nostalgic about having models that are like decades older than everything else on the table. But
Like your acolytes that are older than you.
yeah, literally, there are models that you can still buy from GW that are older than me, which is insane.
Oh, I'm not going to go down that'll just become a whinge fest. But I do
For
want to
sure.
point out something that you just mentioned, which I thought was fascinating for someone who's listening and to me, is that Border War that literally just happened last weekend is your 1 year anniversary. So first off,
Hmm.
congratulations, happy anniversary. But it's
Yeah.
interesting that you have only been in our scene for a year, but you were
Hmm.
then invited to the top 16 best of the best tournament, which when you look at who was invited, right? And I actually might bring up a photo because I was going to bring this up later on. Um, this was the way the Masters played out, and you can see that it was like almost like a knockout kind of final, right? So it wasn't a
Hmm.
traditional 5 game tournament, and if you lost, you could still make your way. It was like a best of the best knockout, and for anyone who is outside of Australia, at least 50% of those names are highly experienced, highly I mean, obviously they're all well respected, but you've got people like Matt Tyrrell, Joel Graham, Joel McGrath. Like there's a whole bunch of names here. Dave Kerr, obviously, who have been in our scene almost since like first edition or second edition, established names. Yet here you are, 12 months into our hobby, COVID restricted because tournaments really only have started to kind of bubble up, and we've had restrictions on the size. Yet
Hmm.
you've gone in and gotten an invitation. So, like, how was it for you to pick up Skaven and do so well so quickly? Like, how'd you do
Um,
it?
Look, I think, I mean, even outside of AOS, I've always had an obsessive nature on whatever is my main focus of that game at the time. That I go deep into a competitive space. So whether that was Dota, League of Legends, Magic the Gathering, whatever it was, I tend to choose one thing and then just drill super hard into it. And with regards to it being Skaven, I've always enjoyed the counter meta armies. There's something much funner about playing from a counter meta position. And Skaven is almost one of the perfect counter meta armies because one, very few people understand how its mechanics works fundamentally to its core, which does give you an advantage. But two, similar to Cities of Sigmar, it actually has a huge amount of variability, which means that if you are looking to get hyper competitive, there is some weird angles that you can take that people wouldn't even imagine possible by combining certain combinations. And so yeah, just really drilling down. And over the last year, I do have a big element of whenever I play a game, if I make a mistake or there's a key thing that I'm doing wrong, I really do try to commit it to memory as to like, okay, that was a mistake. Let's try not to do that next time, and really start to from each game try not to look at the game as a loss, but ask yourself like, why did I lose? Did this unit actually do what it needed to do? Did the thing that I actually thought, like sometimes you think a unit was doing well, and then you actually look at it and you go, wait a minute, it actually did nothing. It just kind of sat there the whole game. And so really critically analyzing each game post to refine the list. Um, Plus, as much as you can, I know this is a bit of a horrible thing to say, but try to avoid net listing. Because as soon as you get into net listing, you stop learning for yourself, and you see the thing I find with Netlist is they see the meta of yesterday, not the meta of tomorrow. And if you're playing a counter army like Skaven, you need to be countering the meta of tomorrow. By the time it's already here, it's too late for you to be countering it because the good players are already onto the next thing that's countering the meta of today. And so yeah, just a case of really critically analyzing each game. Try not to beat yourself up after each game as well. I see a lot of players when they lose, they get very disheartened by it. Um, if it makes anyone feel better, when the new Skaven book came out, I was on a 9 loss streak when the new Skaven book came out, trying to figure out what in the hell actually works in this new book. And the weird thing was, it was a stronger book than the old one. Yet I still was on a 9 loss streak, purely because it was new. The combinations weren't known, and the mechanics of what actually took the army from good to great really weren't figured out until 3 to 6 months in, where people worked out you can string super long lines with clan rats, you can bounce between gnaw holes. That the Vermin Lord Warbringer is actually just a huge Chad, and you should take it in every army. But like things like that, really weren't figured out till later. So yeah, just a combination of just analytical thinking, trying to learn from each game and trying to beat yourself up and get better after every game, and most importantly, enjoy yourself. I think there was an early coach video that I watched a while back when I was getting. No, on that note, coaches videos. I've watched every coach video, especially for the Skaven ones, Joel Graham's one, Matthias's ones,
Like,
even reaching
like
out.
to the Dan Brewer. Like I remember doing a
Yeah.
video back in first edition where we did some tactical stuff on the
Oh,
table.
I've seen it. I've seen it. Like literally, Dan Brewer. So I was watching even the early ones. Had a chat with Rohit as well. Learning from people who are, who are great in the past and trying to study and why they did the things that they do, to then sort of progress through and yeah, you eventually learn the mechanics, learn some of the janky things, and yeah, so definitely watching some videos, watching some content, and actually talking with other players about what is competitive. Try not to talk about what's not uncompetitive, what doesn't work, and just going into whinge territory. Think about what actually works, and how you can improve. And yeah, and then just do that over and over. And it doesn't matter if it's AOS or anything outside in life. It's a good strategy to get good at anything in life, really.
All right. I am gonna ask you about Skaven very shortly, like to get into a bit more of the weeds, but I want to pull you up for a second, right?
Yep.
Because you do learn more from your losses than your wins.
Yep.
And often sometimes, the dice go well, sometimes they don't go well. Probability and understanding and repetition. And you talked earlier about even you talked a lot about Skaven being your own army, your only army, and so one that you play often, and through that process, you learn its limitations. You gain experience to make better decisions at tournaments. But what I
Mm.
wanted to ask you before we get into actually like your thinking around Skaven, preparing for the Masters, talking about the book and the way you're currently seeing it, is how do I get better at doing that analysis? Because as you said, some people
Mm.
get really upset when they lose. They don't want to talk about it. They pack up their models. They might go have a couple of drinks. Um, but from your experience from video games and from Warhammer, what advice would you give me to better understand or like analyze my losses or my victories?
Mm. No, for sure. So advice on doing it. So I guess the first thing would be is to separate out the what you did and the result. So the best example I can give of that is if you have a strategy that wins 75% of the time, you could and you're losing still 25% of the time. So you can do everything right and still lose the game. It does not mean you did the wrong play. In fact, you took the winning line. And once you can understand the math, and sometimes you'll do the winning line and you'll lose 3 or 4 games in a row, and you'll be like, wow, this is the worst. But if you can understand the math behind it and you go, actually, I had a 75% chance of hitting it each time, and that was the one critical like key piece play that actually held everything together, you can lose the game and still be happy that you brought the game to a 75% result. And I think the time where you can get a little bit more upset is when you do a proper misplay, is where you end up taking an action where it's like when you run the math afterwards, you go, wow, I only had like a 15% chance of actually winning with that. When I actually could have done something else which had a 65% chance of winning. That's when it's truly a misplay, not when you did the high probability play. It just didn't turn out in your favor. And yeah, so in terms of analyzing it, I think to a certain degree, if you're on things like TTS, so you can record your matches if you want. You might sound a bit weird, but you can record your matches afterwards and just send it to someone else who's not you, because you can only see one thing. And ask someone else, if you were in this position, what would you have done? And you'd be
Mm.
surprised how many people would say, I would have deployed way back here. I would have went right up here. Even for some of the matchups I had at Masters, I had a chat with some of my mates, and one of my mates who's very, very good at this game, but it doesn't play in the competitive space. He was the only person who gave me the counterplay option. Like everyone said one thing, he said, "No, I would do this," and I'm like, "This guy beats the crap out of me every single time I play him. If he says that there's something here in doing that, I should look at it." And in the end, that was what I did. So I think in terms of helping you understand the analysis, just don't be afraid to ask for feedback. If you need to run like the math sides of things, just you can record it, you can take notes, and you can do the math later if you need to. Um, yeah, and just definitely don't beat yourself up between the difference between the outcome being bad and the probability of the outcome being bad. They're two very different things. And it's very easy to beat yourself up on an outcome. Some great players who are 5-0 players sometimes go 1-4 in a tournament. It happens. It's not because they were a bad player. Sometimes the dice just weren't on their side, but they knew they took the winning line, and they just happened to roll the 20% loss 4 games in a row. It happens.
And I think part of this, to bring it to the Skaven discussion, because that's obviously great lessons, regardless if you play Skaven or not. And I know anyone
Mm,
who's listened to me talk about it, like I did a great video on deployment. I talk a lot about taking photos of your deployment. Like if there's two photos that I always take, it is a photo with my opponent, and I always take a photo with my deployment, because I
yep.
want to see where I deploy, what I did that worked really well, maybe something that I shouldn't have done differently. And as I go through the analysis, I go, oh, actually, I probably should have dropped them back a little closer because I underestimated how fast they would be, and, board position, or maybe just didn't have enough bodies on the objective. So I needed to position X amount of bodies and make sure I use CP here, or whatever it is. I can kind of start to see visually. I'm a visual kind of person. So you
Mm.
see it unfold. That's always been a powerful tool, at least in my toolkit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think deployment, I've heard it called turn zero, and I do actually believe in that. It is almost worth as much as a whole turn in itself. Um, I think when it comes to deployment, a lot of people, they don't think about it. I know it sounds a bit cruel, but they just kind of go boop, 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 boop. But it is really one of the key pivotal things that sets it up. And we'll get into this later. Deployment is actually what gives Skaven its strength in defense. Because if you're letting multiple units get hit per turn, you're losing the game. The defense of Skaven is the fact that because you can either use MSU or Clanrat screens to block out very long lines, you can have 3,000 points of your opponent running into your front line, and guess what? They're killing 100 points of Clanrats. You can have 10,000 points of melee guys out there. You're killing 100 points of Clanrats, and I'm limiting them at that. Where if you mess up your deployment and they hit 2 packs of Clanrats and a PCB screen and some PCBs, you don't have enough units to take 5 turns of fights like that. And you can often see that mistake happening in the deployment phase, where I think almost people aren't being Skaven enough. They're too defensive in their deployment, and I don't say defensive in like a bubble way. They're trying to be too normal. If you look at a lot of my deployments, I deploy like literally the far border. Like it's like, okay, you're over there. My entire army is all the way on this side. Okay, like, oh, I think you're going to alpha me. I'm literally on the back 2 inches of my board. Like, I'm not like, maybe I should have one of these guys up front as a hedge. No, no, no. The strategy is back. We are back. We're right at the edge. We're maximizing that gap. And so really just thinking about what the opponent is trying to do and where you can be, that is the total opposite of that to maximize it. And don't try to like sit in some comfortable average. Skaven is not a comfortable average army. It is a extreme army in all senses.
And that's the benefit, right, of when you're playing an off-meta army. By the way, PCB being plague sensor
Oh,
bearers. If you're not,
yes.
if you're not down with the lingo from
Yeah,
the
the old
streets of
Skaven chat.
the streets of the Under Empire, word to your Warpstone. Uh,
That's it.
Never do that again. Where was I going with this? Where was I going with this? Like, so Dan Brewer was one of my frequent opponents in especially like
Hmm.
the first and second version of Age of Sigmar. Dan took a bit of a break, but I remember Dan being so unconventional with the way he moved his bodies. I remember
Hmm.
him being very anti movement trays, because yes, it'll speed things up a little bit, but he felt that by putting yourself on a movement tray, you really restrict the movement of Skaven and the flow of having, as you said, the clan rats, and being able to board control with untraditional shapes, as opposed to the little clouds that a lot of people love.
Hmm.
Uh,
So on that note, I've seen that video, and actually there was a big learning point for me on that because I used to use tight movement trays. And one of the biggest differences where I started winning in Skaven was removing movement trays. But to take his lesson one step further, because I remember him saying movement trays makes you lazy. I'm going to say lazy movement trays make you lazy. So I ended up designing and printing out movement trays like this. So these are exactly 1 inch apart. So the main problem is that if you've got your clan rats in a 20 by 20 bundle, you're only taking up that much room. With these, within 20 seconds, I can form a line of 20 clan rats that's about 32 inches long. So I'm still getting the maximum benefit while still being legal, still using movement trays to make it quicker, but getting like not neutering your strength as a result of having to use movement trays. Now, of
mm.
course, sometimes you're not going to be in a straight line. That's okay. I make these 4 long, so I go straight line, bend, straight line, bend. and that lets you play at speed while keeping your brain for the more important things of winning the game. But I do agree that stacking all your stuff into tight movement trays it's not how you win on Skaven.
No, Skaven, like with my gits, it's actually okay with the clouds because I want to maximize the amount of attacks, especially when you can do mortals on your attacks and you got
Yeah.
like sneaky snufflers and I got like 12-inch bubble. So I want to compress them as much as possible. But Skaven is such a very different army. You don't need that. And really, you dominate from board presence, being able to spread out. And you've got so many great movement tricks that you can reposition your army so quickly. So I love those call outs. The other call that I was going to quickly make was around the retreat mechanic. Skaven does so well retreating, and yeah, your Master Molder can retreat. But even as you said, like I don't care if clan rats die. I remember seeing like Dan especially would, there'd be 2 clan rats left. He'd always retreat them. And this is well before Rally even came out because 2 clan rats can annoy you on an objective. They can tag and pin you in a combat that you want to get out of. It's going to take you an extra combat, or it's going to soak up some shooting that would normally go somewhere else. Really thinking about your tools and thinking about the sacrifice and not always using the traditional conventional buff up your troops, send them in for combat, grind out the win, move along and keep fighting and scoring your battle tactics. You are playing 4D chess.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a certain way you can look at clan rats as a clock on the table. They're a clock that says I have 60 wounds worth of time before I have to do something, otherwise I'm going to die. And I think a lot of the time, especially if I miss my key spells, like you miss your Death Frenzy, you miss your more warp power, and all that stuff, I'm not afraid to just send one clan rat screen running straight forwards and everything else running straight back. And you instantly force like a 16-inch, 18-inch gap in the middle of the table that says, you know what? My spells were so bad that I'm willing to just cut off 150 points worth of clan rats and we're going to reset for the next turn. You'll get 2 points, but that's okay because if I kill you, I'm going to be 10 points ahead anyway. So I'm willing to give up 2, 3, 4 points for the reset and then just absolutely retreating back. And I think I do agree in that it's something that a lot of newer players don't think enough of. They think, I failed my spells. Well, I better go in to die anyway. they just charge it straight in.
It's funny you say that, Kieran, because when I reflect on my Skaven games, and I have played a lot of Skaven games since the new book, I've had a lot of opponents pick up Skaven. The games that I win, and often the ones that I win very quickly or easily, it's often the ones where the opponent is too aggressive. They're too excited to get Thankful up into my face turn 1 to Burninate. They will skid a leap, or they'll use like the Vermin Lord to teleport out of through a Gnarl hole in turn 1, and they will just throw all their toys at me as much as possible. And if I can just soak up that attack, and I could then likely double them because they'll take the top of turn 1, they'll do surfboard, all that stuff. I usually have enough tools to be able to remove them and then dominate the board, as you said, the clock. And I do find that a lot of people can be too aggressive. There's reasons to do it, but there's the same time, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, and I think something people forget. It's a 5-turn game. It's not a 3-turn game. Like if it's a 3-turn game, go in. But you got 5 turns. And normally, if you're an aggressive army, the game goes for 3 turns, which means that you've got 2 turns worth of like like dancing for the first 2 turns to really get things correct before you're actually forced to engage and actually play the 3-turn game that is as an aggressive army.
So talk to me about Skaven right now. We are currently, if you're listening to this, we are in the current middle of the season 2 of the General's Handbook 2022. We've gone past the Galatian veteran meta, which you and I both agree was terrible for us, given, well, not us, you, I'm not Skaven, but like, a lot of your troops being battle line and just being able to delete those clan rats, plague sense of errors, anything that was battle line. We're now sitting currently in a meta of Galatian veterans, which rewards a lot of non-named small heroes, and you have a lot of those, which is really cool.
Yeah.
We've obviously had so many new armies. We've had 8 new battle tomes this year alone. So where does Skaven stand currently, whether it's at a meta, whether it is, what you're seeing competitively, like are we in a shooting meta and you're doing really well? Like where do we stand?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, one of the nice things with Skaven is Skaven has always stood somewhere between uncompetitive and reasonably competitive for a very long time. And that is an artifact of it's got such a wide book that no matter what the meta is, there's generally something in Skaven that's going to work well. And interesting enough, the same things that work well now are not necessarily the same things that worked 6 months ago, or not necessarily the same things that worked 6 months before that. The best example I can give on that would be Thankful. I think Thankful right now is probably one of the strongest units in Skaven and possibly even the game. Um, but and I think and that's mainly because it may sound strange. We're in the Galatian champion meta. And now you think, well, we're in the GV meta before. Yes, but because we're in the GV meta, no one could take hordes or even not even hordes, just even elite infantry because of bounty hunters. Now, a lot of that's gone. If you look at the 16 list that were at Masters, none of them were monster trucks. Not that I know of.
No.
And the main thing that Thankful's really bad against is Gargants, and Gargants isn't something that I'm necessarily, teching for. You're not seeing 8 dragons, you're not seeing monster trucks, you're not seeing these types of armies, which means, and I think that's because Galatian champions are good. Most Galatian champions are designed to buff infantry pieces nearby. So other armies have a power pair of Galatian champion plus infantry things that protect champion and get buffs from champion. And that's pretty much, as you saw in Masters, almost every army had that level of power pairing, which means that Thankful suddenly becomes one of the best units in the whole game. So yeah, that's probably one of the main meta shifts. I'd say that Thankful is pretty well core to any list right now. That being said, there was a guy who went 5-0, I believe he was in Russia, with a full pure Eshet list. Vermin Lord Deceiver,
Yes,
like
I saw
Sling,
that.
4 assassins, and all gutter runners. Now, how he did that, that's you're gonna have to ask him because I have, I have no
I,
idea.
I did wake up to that list because someone sent it to me, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, I get it. I do. And again, it goes back to what I was saying before about the way that you have health in Skaven is via making it so your opponent can only hit 1 to 2 units a turn. So if you can make it so they can only hit 1 to 2 packs of gutter runners and everything else is skidded out in the back or elsewhere, that's how you get your health. And in order to run that list, that would have to be the case, as well as being largely alpha and then double turn 1, 2, and things like that. Um, so I'd say the nice thing with Skaven right now is almost everything is viable, but it is certainly hard to build that 5-0 meta. I don't think there is a 5-0 meta stomper like this is the list, Skaven list at the moment. If there is any two main pieces I would always consider for me personally, it would be Vermin Lord Warbringer and Thankful. The two of them together are a very strong core. Combine that with 60 Clarence, so it's 3 packs of 20. You've got
Pause.
1,100
Pause.
points.
We're,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
getting into your getting into your list. I swear I'm
No,
going to
that's
bring it up. Before we get into the list, I do want to ask you when you went into Masters and preparing for the Masters, the meta, what
mhm.
were your considerations? Because then after that, I'm going to reveal your list.
Yeah. Okay. So considerations going into masters. So now
Whether
this.
whether it was whether it's opponents and the army archetypes, whether it is I'm going to face a lot of hordes, a lot of IDK, whether it's going to be particular factions or builds or even just the battle plans and what like how do you construct this list? As you said, a very deep Skaven book list.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing with masters is looking at the masters players. Most of the people at masters are number one in a faction, and what was interesting is different factions for different people. So one of the main considerations going in is you're probably going to have to face anything like they like and to that degree Australian Masters was very unique where of the 16 players there was 14 different books, Skaven being the most popular. There was 2 Skaven players. So there you go. So one factor is you're going to have some level of variability. That was compounded by, and this is probably going a little bit too in depth for some people, but Joel Graham was my round 1 placement because of the way the seeded tournament works. He's a very, very strong player in the Australian scene. And more famously, he has a ton of armies and does well in just about anything he picks up. So it wasn't even a case of me being like, yeah, that guy, he plays KO. I know he's going to play KO. I'll counter KO. He's won tournaments on Gits. He's won tournaments on Slaves. He's won tournaments on IDK.
IDK, yeah.
So to that degree, it really was quite hard because I had to pick something that was going to be able to take a variety of armies, not just from the tournament, but even from round one. That being said, I know he has a strong inclination to Gits at the time, as well as IDK and slaves, and so those were probably the three main focus groups. At which point, Thankful with 4 flamethrowers goes well into all three of those. IDK, you got Reavers and Thralls, just boat up and flame them. Gits, I mean, it's a no-brainer against Gits. It's probably the single best thing you can take against Gits in any army. And then Slaves is a bit of a tricky one because Varangard it's bad against, but Chosen, it will just murder the Chaos, not Knights, the Warriors.
Yeah, the Warriors.
It'll take out all of them, and by having +4 to its unbind next to a Gnawhole, you can actually deal with Cabbalists quite well. They get 3 dice instead of 2, but you can actually take them on, and if you can drop their levitate and make it so they can't fly over, again, as I was saying before, Skaven is all about trying to force your opponent to play a clean game while you get to play a dirty game. You can teleport, you can fly around, you can fight on death, you can set up screens. They have to hit your front line and go in the front way. And if you can drop their levitate, then Slaves has to be. If you can drop levitate, Slaves is actually one of the cleanest armies there is. They have to go front first. That's all they have.
Yeah.
They have no teleport anymore. They can teleport back, but that's a whole thing in itself.
Yeah, they're very much moving forward. And I guess, as you said, like Chaos Warriors with their Nurgle banner, which everyone knows is very strong, you don't care. You can burninate them with four thankful pew pew pews, and you couldn't care less about the minuses. And like those 4 slap. And I guess it's interesting, right? Because what you said is I can't list Taylor basically. Like you can anticipate the meta. You know, I'm likely to play Gits. I'm likely to play Slaves. There's a good chance someone's going to run Lumineth. There's a good chance that they're going to be playing these types of people. And you can either, and this is where, from a list construction, you can either build a list that's going to try to get ahead of the meta. But unfortunately, at a tournament, you know, sometimes you build a meta list and you just don't play those armies. You dodge Zinch completely because you only got 5 games. Alternatively, you just build a list and you know your list so well and you've practiced it so well that you are an off-meta choice and your opponent just doesn't know how to respond to you.
Yeah. I think the only thing I could read from the meta, if there was anything to read, as I discussed before, was that I was reasonably certain I wasn't facing big things. So I wasn't facing monster trucks, gargants, dragons, or things like that. So if I were thinking of those, things like warp lightning cannons work really well into that. Most notably, I had no warp lightning cannons. I had almost no ranged output at all, because I didn't think I was going to be fighting the big, the big centerpiece thing. And to that degree, that was correct on the most part, other than Teclis, which I'm not very, cannons are not very good against Teclis anyway. So that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, and like it's obviously a meta choice right now with the General's Handbook, with Galatian veterans, and a lot of people like Gargant players have moved away. Like I played Gargants recently, and it is quite hard in this particular season. The same is true with like the Frostlord on Stonehorn type builds. Again, it can be quite hard, and there's a couple of little Galatian veteran idiots you can pick, but it kind of takes away from the monster trucks that you keep talking about.
Yeah.
So let's get to the list and let's talk a little bit about what the list is, how it works, and like what's the thinking behind it. So for anyone who's listening to this in audio, it's take what's theirs and your triumph was inspired. You have a Vermin Lord Warbringer, who's the general with the command trait Devious Adversary, the Rust Cursed Armor, and Flaming Weapon as the universal spell. You have Thankful, and you've equipped Thankful with 4 Warp Fire projectors. I know this is a question that comes up all the time. Do I do 2 and 2? Do I do 4 shooty? Do I do 4 combat? I'm sure you'll explain later why you chose what you chose. But Thankful also had Skitter Leap. The Grey Seer had Skitter Leap. Your Grey Seer, your 2 Grey Seers, one had Skitter Leap, the other one had Death Frenzy and Leadership of the Alpha. 3 units of 20 Clan Rats, 10 Plague Sensor Bearers, or as we now know, PCBs. You have a Hell Pit Abomination. By the way, I played one of these for the first time recently, and I was actually really impressed with the Hell Pit Abomination. It slapped.
They're good.
I underestimated it. I went in, I'm like, I actually was really impressed. You also had the Vermintide, which I haven't seen on the table at all. So curious to hear about this particular endless spell. Warp Lightning Vortex, nice to see it back. And our Uber driver himself, Lolchin, the Soul Seeker, wrapped
Yep.
up in a battle regiment at 1,990 points, 134 wounds, 2 drops.
Yep. Only
Oh,
thing which was left out is the warp grinder
so
as
I
well.
was about to say that. I'm like, oh, and I also forgot the warp grinder. Yes, the one warp grinder. So how does this work? What are the combinations? What are you trying to achieve? Like, talk to me through the thinking behind this list and the evolution of this list.
Yeah. So okay. So there are quite a few different pieces and packages here that are quite complex, but I will do my best to break them down as much as I can. So the evolution of this list, it actually started originally with CanCon. So at CanCon, I didn't quite have the same level of depth and knowledge of the meta and things like that. In fact, Masters was the first time I've ever faced Cruel Boys. So I've officially ticked off the list of. Actually, no, I still haven't faced Bone Splitters. So there you go. So there was still I knew my army well, but I didn't know opponents' armies very well. So at CanCon, I ran a very similar list, but it was 40 Plague Sensor Bearers, the Warbringer, Drills, Clan Rats. It's just good stuff on the table as punch as hard as you can. What I eventually learned was having good stuff that punches hard is great, but if you can't actually engage it into the main things that you need to engage it into, it really doesn't matter. Things will run away, things will shoot at you, and you'll just get whittled down. So this was almost over time, I just kept chopping off little bits and adding in a little piece of tech that allowed more mobility with the sacrifice of power and health. And eventually it led to this, which has a few different things worth noting. So we'll go with the Warbringer first. Warbringer just hits incredibly hard. Like we're talking like Kragnos level damage on this guy. Um, Probably the main piece of tech there is Rust Cursed Armor. Most people do prefer the Warpstone Charm, which is the add 1 to the rend nearby. Rust Cursed Armor is +1 to his armor save. Now, the reason for that is the Graciers underneath both have they're GC, so they can't be shot at. And as Master Clan, they have a 3+ bodyguard into nearby units. The Plague Sensor Bearers are normally in reserve, and the Hell Pit's tanky enough that he'll handle himself. So if you go into shooting lists, they're looking at your 2 big guys at the back. They're not looking at Clan Rats, they're looking at Warbringer, they're looking at Thankful. Now, the problem is if you don't have that armor, the Warbringer is a 4-up save, and so is Thankful, but you can only finest hour one of them. And whichever one you don't finest hour, guess which one's getting shot. And so by having that extra +1 to save, it means that if I am going into an alpha shooting army, the Warbringer is 3-up. You can turn 1 finest hour Thankful, and Thankful can issue 1 command twice, which means they're both 3-up ignoring rend 1, so equally tough, which means that there's no obvious choice for the opponent to shoot. So the Rust Curse armor is really just an anti-shooting tech, as well as the times where I lose is when the Warbringer dies before he actually gets to go in. It's never that he doesn't do enough damage when he's in. He dies before he gets there. So with again that earlier on, I used to just be like, Ren 3, no brainer, just pick up anything and it dies. But then it didn't matter. He's still picking up everything and they'll die. But now he's doing it more consistently because he's still alive by the time he gets there. Plus, if now at a 3-up save, you stack Mystic Shield, Finest Hour, All Out Defense, and suddenly he's like a -1 or something insane. Of course, it goes back to a 3-up, but it just means that even with a Ren 3, they're not taking him down. Moving on to the Thankful with 4 Warp Fire Projectors. So, again, to what I was saying before, the meta choice for me was that I took the belief that there was not going to be big boys. It was going to be small stuff. Now, I understand that a lot of people do like the 2 and 2. I've ran the 2 and 2 before. I understand its place in the meta, but the meta right now, I believe, is tipped towards 4 warp fires because, as I was saying before, the main threats I'm worried about were Gits. Gits have the squigs and the bounders and all that. They're all 2 wounds each. They're not 1, they're 2. Slaves to Darkness with Chaos Warriors and Knights and Varangard. They're all too tanky for 1 Flamer to take them out. And even in the event, people go, well, what if you go into a big thing and you need to do the punching damage? I'm not winning that matchup because Thankful's punching a Gargant. Like, it's just not happening. Like, Thankful's adding 4, 5, 6 damage to the Gargant, sure, but I'm winning that matchup because my Warbringer, my PZBs, the Clan Rats, the Endless Spells, they did their thing. Thankful's just an add-on in that matchup. Whereas with 4 Warp Fire Throwers, in the matchups where it counts, he is your win condition. You can almost be like, everything else is protect him. He will win this matchup alone. And there's so many matchups where 4 warp fire throwers will, if he lives for 5 turns and gets to do his thing over 5 turns, you win the game. And that's the win condition in itself.
So can I just pause you on Thankful for a second? So
Yep.
you talked about the current sitting in the meta and why you took the 4 warp fires. Is there a world where you see yourself switching to 2 and 2 or even 4 offensive Thanquils? Like would it take like the start of the season, like start of season 3, AOS 3 was monster focused General's Handbook. If we
Yep.
were in that time again, would you consider flipping it or would you just drop him altogether?
Personally, I would probably drop him altogether, only in that I think if I was starting to go to full fists Thanquil, well, we have full fist Thanquil. It's called Vermin Lords. Like they kind of are that melee threat at that price point. In particular, Vermin Lord Screech, which is the Master Clan one. So you're still getting the Master Clan benefit from Thanquil, but you're then getting better damage. He's got a great spell, good mobility. I do see a world where the 2-2 can work. In particular, where I first took the 2 and 2 was to deal with GCs that were protected by weak chaff. So the idea there is it's not so that you can punch on a Gargant, it's so you can walk up. Let's say Belladama and the Wolves is a great
Yeah.
example.
Yep.
You can
Yep.
walk up, you flamethrower the Wolves. Oh, look, Belladama's now exposed. Now I can run in and just smash her. Where before, if you just had full flamethrower or full fist, you couldn't actually do that. So I do see a world where 2 and 2 works. I have seen people who run 4 melee fists, and congratulations to them. It's a hilarious build, especially with the boat. You can go 28 inches and then just punch on in the background, which is hilarious. But it's not my type of army. But I wouldn't be surprised if someone does bring it to a competitive event and does well.
I agree with you. I think when you're looking at 4 of the melee Thanquils, you're probably better off going with a Vermin Lord as opposed to taking Thanquil. But you obviously do lose the magical supremacy that Thanquil can bring and the ward. Like
Yeah.
part of Thanquil's charm is just how hard it can be to take him out. He is a jerk.
So something to note with Thanquil is, as I said before, if you can make Thanquil live over 5 turns, you're doing well. But you don't want to make him live by having him sitting in your back corner, scared out of his mind, because that's not winning you the game either. So Thanquil heals D3 per combat phase. Now, if you can get him hurt early on from fighting, not ideally just him miscasting and hurting himself like an idiot, then if you think that every combat is D3 health, that means that he's healing 20 health over the course of a game. He's on 14 health, which means that he's actually got, in theory, if you can play him over 5 turns, he's got the same health as a Mega Gargant and a 5-up ward save. He's actually tankier than a Mega Gargant over 5 turns.
I'm just booing for people who are listening. I'm booing you. But like, yeah, it's a great way to think about it, right? And if you happen to fight yourself out of combat, you can obviously heal. If you wanted to double down with some spare points, you could bring Emerald Life Swarm. If you wanted to build into that,
Yeah.
not that I probably
So
would recommend the Emerald Life Swarm for Thanquil, but
yeah,
I just wanted to explore if there was a world because everyone does take. A lot of people do take the 4 warp fire projectors, but would there be a world where you would swap them out? And I'm hearing some examples of where you might go 2 and 2.
yeah, it's the 2 and 2, especially with the triple master clan. One of the things you can do, as I was saying, is you boat up 18 inches, you walk up 10, you flamethrower, you land a 9-inch charge, and then you get to do a master clan pile. Then you get to pile, then you get a 2-inch punch. So we're talking about like a 40-inch range on you being able to punch someone, which into certain matchups is fantastic. However, it would be into a matchup where people are running like MSU style skitter. If people are running hard castles and they're not letting you into the castle, I wouldn't be running it into that. But again, if some sort of meta evolved where like MSU style fighting was the way to go, I think 2 and 2 would be the way to go in that instance.
Cool. For anyone who doesn't know, we're talking about MSU being minimum size units. So if everyone just takes a lot of like small 5 model or 10 model idiots, as opposed to reinforcing them, that's where potentially you'd think of the 2 and 2. And just if you don't mind me asking, I'll let you explain it. But what's the combination with Thanquil and the boat, aka Launch and the
Launcher.
Soul Seeker?
Yeah, so Launcher on the Soul Seeker is probably, I mean, in my mind, some people don't do this. In my mind, if you're taking Thankful, you're taking Boat. Like they are a
Yeah.
power pair made in heaven. If the boat goes up in cost, it is purely because Thankful was too good at using it. No, like no one else is really using it except him. So what it is it allows you to move a wizard. You summon the boat and you can move a wizard 18 inch. You move the boat 18 inches and the wizard can hop on the boat, go 18 inches and hop off the boat on the other side. You take 1 wound for doing so, but you've got 14 of them in a 5-up ward and in healing D3, so who really cares? But more importantly is it's the only long movement like that in the game where you actually get to make a move afterwards. So it means that if you position the boat well, you're going 18 inches, and then you're still moving 10, and then you're still flamethrowing 8. One thing which I'll go into here, which is a bit of a secret Skaven tech for anyone listening, which is not particularly obvious, but it's a very, very powerful trick that I use. So when you send the boat up, Thankful must get out of the boat outside of 9 inches, but the boat can be in 9 inches. Because of the size of the boat and the 3 inches, you can put the boat at about 6.5 inches away from the enemy, with Thankful getting out at at between 6.5 to 9, with Thankful then getting outside of that zone. What it means though is that in your movement, you move Thankful to about 4 inches away from the enemy, so you're in a range for flamethrower. But here's the kicker: if you can position that boat all the way on the side of the map or something like that, where they're outside of unbind range, you get to do a flamethrower. If they do a bad redeploy, you'll kill them. And if they don't, if they redeploy out, great. Often you can take the objective and move them off it. And then when it's the opponent's turn, because they're out of unbind range, you're still in range of the boat. And so you can now take the boat back into your army into safety. So you can actually move through the boat, stay within range of the boat, and then do your flamethrower and use it to move in both turns, which makes it probably one of the best mobility tools in the game. But it's hilarious that Thankful at the amount of wounds he is fits on this tiny base that is somehow legal.
Yeah, because you've got to start within 3 inches of the boat, and it has to be a wizard as well. So it does restrict you a fair bit. So 3 or 6?
Yeah.
It's 3. It's 3, right?
Within 3, yeah. And
Yeah,
I was playing against Sylvaneth last weekend, and I'm always surprised that the Warsong Revenant is like twice the size of Thankful, despite the Warsong being a GC, less than 10 health, and Thankful being 14 wounds, 4 up, 5 up, is like, yep, no, I fit on this tiny little boat.
Yeah. And the one thing I want to call out before we move into the other parts of the list is, again, this is for the newer folks. I'm sure people listening to this who are more experienced know the trick. But one of the other reasons why the Lolchin, the Soul Seeker, is powerful compared to, let's say, teleporting through your Gnarhole is it's costing you points, obviously, 50 points currently in the season, while a Gnarhole is a free terrain feature. It's the ability to move after you teleport through the boat, where if you teleport through the Gnarhole, you can't move. So you're doing everything from outside of 9, which means that your charges, if you did an offensive build, is quite difficult. It obviously means that your warp fire projectors are out of range. They're 8 inches,
8 inch.
right? So
Right.
you wouldn't be able to shoot if you came out of the Gnarhole. That's the trick here. So, which is why Lolchin is so powerful. And it also allows you to, if you want to, teleport with the Vermin Lord using the Gnarhole and use Thankful to teleport with the boat. You could go double down or triple down if you wanted to do the Storm Fiends using the tunneling grinder. And obviously you've got, Skitter Leap. So you've got a lot of movement shenanigans, but it's the movement after the Lolchin that makes Thankful the power pair.
Yeah, absolutely. It lets him get into range. It's then moving in both phases. It really is a power play. Like I wouldn't take Thankful if Boat didn't exist. They really do match that well.
Well, it got to a point actually that I would bring. So I was playing Stormcast when this book came out for the first time, and there was a lot of Skaven in my local community. I actually brought out. I was playing Stormcast at the time, and I brought out my Knight Incantor because with the +4 to casting, and there's been times where Thankful was casting on a +5 because there was also arcane terrain next to the Gnarhole. I just wanted that auto unbind because the Incantor has that once per game. I say no, and when I say no to Thankful on that boat, just automatically unbinding it, it delayed the whole strategy. It delayed everything that allowed me to capitalize. So it just shows you how important it can be. But that's such a rare That's a rare thing,
Yeah.
Skaven people. You don't have to worry about most armies auto unbinding. Although Khorne being as popular as they are,
Yeah.
might be a consideration.
No, and that's, I mean, we'll get into this after if we need to, but my game 4 of Masters, that was one of the things that shut me down is Teclis just says no to boat. Of all my spells, of all Skid Elite, Dreaded Death Frenzies, everything, he knew that boat was the most dangerous thing I could possibly do. Took it out. And then at Border War last weekend, I was playing against my mate Luca, and he knew that he took out the not the boat but the Skid Elite instead because he had the auto unbind on KO. That's how important it was for him just to stop that teleport. Was he wasn't afraid of Warp Lightning Vortex and everything else that I can do. The boat and the teleport were the two things that he knew were the key pins to Skaven doing what they need to do. Yeah.
Speaking of Skitterleap on Thankwall, is that an insurance policy for Longchin, or if he's out of range, or the boat's been unbinded and you can't recast it? Is that why you got Skitterleap as well?
It's mainly for the Warbringer actually. So you can't Skitterleap Thankwall. He's one of the few models in Skaven you can't Skitterleap. It's actually for the Warbringer. So Thankwall's got the boat, the Warbringer's got Skitterleap, the Help Hit Abomination has the Gnawhole, and the Plague Sensor Bearers have the Drill. So it means that in the event that the thing with this list is if I need to alpha someone, if I'm going against a ranged castle, this list can alpha hit people with a pretty good consistency. Not amazing consistency, but enough that if I was gonna flip a coin and take the odds, you do it. So yeah, it's really designed for the Vermin Lord Warbringer to get him to where he needs to be. So that the whole combo is Thankful cast boat. It's pretty hard to stop because it's on a +4/+5. Thankful can also cast Skitterleap. The Greyseers can then just do whatever they need to do. And then you've got the other alpha pieces as they are required. Similarly, as I was alluding to earlier, I'll often start with Flaming Weapon, Dreaded Death Frenzy, and then if I miss my Flaming Weapon, Dreaded Death Frenzy, and Mystic Shield, I won't Skitterleap up the Vermin Lord. Instead, I'll send up a Greyseer and I'll just go, yep, Warp Lightning Vortex, Gears of Gur, and then I'll probably take a Gnawhole back to safety. Being like, yep, I'll send up the Clan Rat and I'll just reset. I'll see you on turn 2 after my Clan Rats have died. Yeah.
No, that's cool. No, that's cool. Just because obviously you've got 2 Skitterleaps, and I know some people don't like redundancy, and they would choose something maybe more offensive or something a little different for Thankful. But it's good to hear why you've chosen that.
Yeah, something worth noting. The Skaven spell laws are probably a little bit lacking, which is a bit of a weird thing because you would think they would have an amazing spell law pool to choose from. So the Greyseers can only choose from 3 spells. And you got Skitterleap, which is just the teleport. You got Death Frenzy, which I've got I've got the Greyseers pretty much never die, by the way. In the whole time I've played, they're always the last unit to die. So the Death Frenzy is going to be there. The Skitterleap's going to be there. The only other spell is Scorch, which I'm not a fan of. I would, to the degree that I would actually rather just have redundancy on Skitterleap over Scorch. So if there was another spell I could take, I would take it. We used to have Warp Gale and stuff like that, which was one of the best control spells in the game. But that's been taken out of the law.
Is Thankwall's not Scryer, is he? He's Master Clan.
No, he's Master Clan. He's a Greyseer, so that's why he has to choose between Scorch, Skitterleap, and Death Frenzy.
He's also a massive abomination as Thankwall as well, and Bone Ripper. Sorry, so.
I mean, that being said, most of the Clan Scryer spells are either like shields or buffs for Clan Scryer units, which I have none of anyway. So even in the event I could take more War Power, I would still be taking the extra Skitterleap. It's also because quite often the Thankful and the Warbringer he'll boat up and teleport away. The core of my army being the Clan Rats, the Sensor Bearers, and the Hell Pit will hold the points, while the Vermin Lord and Thankful will just duke it out on some side of the map and start ripping through some stuff. And quite often what happens is once the enemy reacts to that, they send their army to it. I will then Skitterleap him to the other side of the map, hop on the boat, go to the other side of the map, leave them trapped, 28 inches away. And then by the time they get back to me, it's turn 4. The game's done. Their army's been torn into 2 with these guys bouncing around. So I do like having them as a pair that can bounce each other out.
So you're almost using like Sylvaneth tactics where you will go into a combat, and because most armies are not very fast armies, you can draw them to one side of the board and then focus on other parts of the objective, or take them out of combats because it's going to take them too long to get in or charge. I like one thing though, with the Vermin Lord and the Warbringer and Thankful, are you? Because I've seen this played out both ways, and I think I know what I like. I see them used as like two independent threat pieces where like one goes one side of the board, one goes to the other, almost like you're forcing the issue, and it's hard to for as an opponent to go, well, where do I focus first? Or do you combine them together and concentrate your power by both Thankful and the Vermin Lord to almost go in and smash the castle, to concentrate your power in a center area? Like, how do you use those two tools? Because that's almost half your army
Mm.
between those two.
Yeah, for sure. And it's probably going to be one of those painful answers where it depends on the opponent. And I
So
think that's actually at the core of one of the reasons why I think Skaven is often put in the hard bucket in terms of books, is because it is so much, not only is it a counter meta army, but then you also have to understand what the opponent's trying to do to counter them. So the best example is if I see two equally strong things that are split like this, and they're sufficiently far away from each other, there's no point of sending one to one to the other. You should just go to one because you've got a 2,000 point army versus their 1,000 point army. Kill that. They'll die. You'll lose 300 points worth of stuff. And then you've got 1,700 versus the remaining 1,000, and then you'll win from there. However, I think where the mistake where people split it up is they'll split it up, but they haven't actually got enough damage to kill the things that they need to kill. And then they'll come in and go, bang, Thankful or the Vermin Lord Warbringer will be killed, and you'll be very heavily neutered as a result. So I guess it comes down to one of those things where if I can look at a certain pocket and be like, if I send both there, I will kill what is there and not take damage in return as a result of killing what is there. I'll send them both to the same side. If my plan is to try to draw them to two separate sides, I would split them up, but I would split it up so defensively that either the Warbringer is going to be near a Norhole or Thankful is going to be near a Norhole, so that once I pull them to two separate sides, I will then join them back together, and be like, hey, actually, I'm over here now. And I hopped on the boat and came across, or took the Norhole across. I think game 3 of Masters was a good example of that, where I basically managed to draw the Varangard right into the deep corner, and then Thankful took a boat, the Vermin Lord Warbringer took a Norhole out, and then suddenly I was all the way over at his home objective with all of my stuff. Warp Lightning Vortex stops runs, drop that onto the Varangard, and then they can't run across, like they can't teleport like I can. So by the time he got across the map, even though 5 turns of Varangard running and charging, 10 to 16 inches, he still wasn't able to connect to the key pieces that he needed to hit. So, yeah, so hopefully that makes sense in terms of like when to split and when not to split.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I guess if you're an opponent listening to this and you come up against Keiran or someone like this, what I'm hearing is castling is probably not the best option. If you can try to split them out and have a couple of offensive plays, especially if you've got the movement. Like a lot of my armies at the moment have been like Fulminators, Dragons, obviously Mega Gargants. So I've got those mobile, also powerful, multiple kind of threat pieces. So pulling it apart will allow me to handle them one by one. I fear deeply if you were to concentrate both of them at one particular point, that with the amount of wards and sometimes I know you can bodyguard and pass off things to like
Hmm.
what they call the not the what's the storm
The
vermin. Like if you took
Yeah,
the
yeah.
storm vermin, I know some people take a storm vermin to protect the vermin lord. Um, they can be really
Yeah.
hard to take down.
Yeah, and I think with that in mind, again, you almost think about Skaven as a very quick mobile melee castle. Like it teleports and it wants to stay as one thing. Like, and so you want to bait someone to one side, force a split, and go to the other side. I think with what you were saying about the castling thing, this is where Norhole strategy comes in, which is a whole nother level of complexity to go into. So the idea is I want to put my Norholes in a place where it's like, I know that you want to stop these Norholes, but if you've got half your thing here and half of your thing here, then I've done my job of splitting you into the two parts that I need to then go like, all right, which of these is the weaker two? Chop that one. And so, but if you put them too close, they'll be able to stop both of them, but still maintain one like bubble to do so. So it's
I
a bit of
was
a tricky
gonna
juggle.
I was gonna ask you about your narholes now that we're talking about it, and I think the lesson that I learned very quickly with Skaven is, yeah, I can again depending on the type of army, but Yeah, I can try to block out your gnar holes, especially if you're putting two in my deployment zone. But then you've got Skid Elite, because you've got Lodge and the Soul Seeker. It's almost like I actually ignore I ignore them altogether.
Yep.
Because like I can try to defend them, but there's so many other teleports in this army that I need to
And
anticipate.
for sure, and that's where the Hell Pit Abomination in my mind comes in. So if you're playing against someone who's going to not respect the Gnaw holes, the Hell Pit with double Death Frenzy and the Mystic Shield coming through, it will come out of a Gnaw hole with the Master Clan charge. I've got a 65% chance of generally getting it in out of a Gnaw hole, even though I don't have a command troop near it. And if it gets into a meaty pack of units with two Death Frenzies and a Mystic Shield, you're not killing it. If you are killing it, it's going to trade you back, and it's only 200 points. It's disgustingly cheap for
It's
how strong that thing
only
is.
Oh, I was surprised how good it was. And make no mistake, like you respect it, but I think there's only so many things you can do. You can't try to most armies can't try to protect two gnar holes plus screen out thankwell plus prepare for a vermin lord plus like there's so many things and there's trade-offs and
Yeah.
again depends on the army, depends on what you're building and I mean
And
as a yeah.
and I think this goes again back into what makes Skaven a little bit tricky to pick up to start with is a big part of Skaven is you're laying down all these traps where you're like, if you don't cover this and you don't cover this and you leave a bubble here and you go over here, if you split like this but you want to stay together, and you're laying all these traps and you're trying to ask the opponent, which of these traps are you going to snag on? And that's the one I'm going to attack on. So I've got the ability to do lots of things based upon what was the one vulnerability that you couldn't cover.
Yeah.
Now, where it's hard is I think for a lot of newer players, they have an idea in their head like, I'm a shooting army, I go to here and I shoot. And it's like, yes, but if that's the angle they've covered, you can't use that angle. You're going to lose that fight. You need to really analyze what is the angle they didn't cover and then expose it. And where it's also hard is, especially as you go against better and better players, they're not going to leave a whole lot of wiggle room to make mistakes. So you almost need to force. I mean, like in tennis, they call them forced errors. You need to actually force the errors from the opponent and actually position in a way where, as much as they're a great player, they have to make a mistake in this position, and whichever mistake they make, that's the one you capitalize in.
And this goes back to you talking about not changing your list too often, practicing with the same army, getting the reps in so you know what are the traps, what are the ones that are most likely to take. And, there's a whole bunch of things, but by getting repetition and getting exposure and experience, it does help you through tournaments to get a better understanding and better, I guess, predictability of the way you want to play the game because I think a lot of people just don't get the reps in against like in a tournament. As you mentioned, the first time you played Cruel Boys was at this tournament, right? So you
Mhm.
don't know which traps to lay and at what time, and there's the risk of not knowing the threat pieces. Obviously, you're a great player. I'm not saying you didn't know this, but for the person who's not putting in the reps and who doesn't read the meta and is not really focused on the competitiveness to the degree that maybe you have, it
Mm.
is a bit hard to pull an opponent apart if you don't know your army and its response to the opponent.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, just what's the old Sun Tzu Art of War? Know yourself, know your enemy, sort of shenanigan. It's literally just that. And if you don't know the opponent and you don't know what you're doing on your own army, that being said, there's nothing wrong with that. Like one of my mates down here, literally 2 days before a GT, I was like, I have a feeling I'm going to go against Gargants. I'd literally never played Gargants. I played him. He 20 to 0'd me, literally 2 turns in, smashed me off the table. But I was like, actually, I shouldn't have my stuff 5 inches back from the front line because he'll hit me with two Gargants, kill, pile in, do the 3 inch swing, and then I'm out. And then literally 2 days later in that GT, I got matched against a Gargant player, 20 to 0'd him. So like, there's nothing wrong with not knowing. Just when you do play that army for the first time, really just take note of what are their tricks, what are they trying to do, what am I looking for, and then once you've done enough of that, you'll start to build the pieces together where you can go against a new army, you recognize that's the hammer, that's the chaff, that's the shield, that's this, that's that, and they start to form those generic pieces.
And remember, they probably don't know your army either. So there's a good chance that they don't know what you're going to do. So you are
There's,
often obviously masters is different, but like not a lot of
there,
people know how Skaven work and the intricacies of the unit combinations and even how the different clans interact.
there certainly is a funny anecdote there where I've had a lot of games where I'm looking at my army and I'm like, I've lost. Like they're gonna do this, they're gonna come in here, they're gonna smash the thing. Like I can see the pathway, but that's because I know the flaws in my army better than anyone else. And then it's like it's best not to just like verbalize it, just have your confidence, do your play, and just be like, your turn, see what you do. And you'd be surprised how often, even though there's a very thing that you know beats you, because they haven't played that matchup and they haven't got it, they will do something else. So yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I was at a recent 2-day event. I played an opponent who basically wanted to concede in turn two, and I said, "Don't concede." I said, "Play this out." And he's like, "Oh, but I've already lost." I'm like, "No, you're closer than you think. Like, yeah, you've lost a bunch of troops, but you're not concede level just yet. But it's
Yeah.
that if you were in that mindset, you play as a loser or a victim, and you force that sequence as opposed to, well, yeah, I might be losing, but what could I possibly do to either reduce the gap, maybe claw back the win, or maybe it's a great opportunity to force a few new ideas and decisions that maybe you wouldn't normally have if you were up."
For sure, and I think there's definitely matchups where sometimes the matchup is so unfavorable. There's a 5% chance of winning. I don't think Skaven has many of those, but there are some armies where it's like against a good player, 5%, 10% chance of winning. And if you know that 5 to 10% line, you just go for it. There's no point conceding. You just say, you know what? I'm going to need a double turn. I'm going to need you to fail every save that you have, and I'm going to need you. That 2+ that you need to roll. You're going to fail that 2+ on it as well, and you just go for it.
By the way, you follow Sun Tzu. I follow the Karate Kid. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy.
Absolutely.
Or my Haywoes always be charging.
That's
Anyway,
it.
anyway, we got the clan rats. I think you've talked a little bit about the clan rats already, which is obviously board presence. They're cheap chaff, 100 points for 20 bodies.
Mhm.
They are trash walls. They are objective scorers. They are objective deniers. Is there
Mhm.
anything else you'd kind of add with the clan rats? Because I am actually curious to unpack the hell pit a little more because it is a off meta choice from what I've seen over the last like almost 12 months.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add to the clan rats, just for any Skaven players out there, as we were saying before, don't bubble them up, string them in a long line, and in particular, don't even have them base to base. You can actually have 1 inch gaps between them, which means 20 clan rats, you can make a 32-inch long line from 100 clan rats, which is insane. And the most for most armies, the reason why you don't do that is because as soon as you have 1 or 2 die, you lose your coherency and you break right down to 5. With Skaven, you restore D3 models at the end of the battle shock step, which means that as they die, you just go, okay, I get to restore 1 model, I'll put it here. And there's my coherency back in place. So really use those long strings and think of them as I almost think of them as a line where it's like you can't cross this line for 1 turn. That's what it is. It's like I'm going to run this line up and you can't cross this line for 1 turn. And don't be afraid to have them die because that kind of is their job.
Why is that important? So, like, you talked about stringing, you talked about the 30 odd inch line that you'd be able to create. But talk to me about that. Why is that important at match play level or tactically?
Yeah, I mean, look, Skaven. I mean, Skaven are surprisingly expensive. Like people think of them as a horde army, but if you actually look, I've only got 134 wounds. Don't get me wrong, it's not a 70, 80, 90 point army, but it's certainly no gits. And so its wound count is low, and its armor save is horribly low as well. So the way that you gain defensiveness is by forcing your opponent to not kill enough stuff per turn. If you don't form those long lines and they take out, let's say they take out 2 to 3 packs of clan rats, then they'll hit you once. And this is a common story I hear with as well. I keep losing on the double turn. That's because you're not stringing out your lines enough. Because if you've got 2 to 3 lines strung out, if you hit, I love it when the opponent gets. If I often give them the double turn. You hit the first line, I give you the turn. You hit the second line. You killed 200 points of clan rats. My go. Where that's where the defensibility comes from. Where if you don't have that, you'll just lose too many wounds too fast, especially to armies like Iron Jaws that will just teleport into your face, hit you. You really want to limit your opponent to only killing 20 to 40 clan rats per turn for those early turns. And yeah, if you don't string them out, you could have 60 clan rats in a pack. Like if you get hit by Varangard or a Maw Crusher, they'll chew through that. They will, and then yeah. So that's probably the most that can really be said there is limit the amount of things that can be hit per turn.
Yeah, I love it because as an opponent, I don't want to kill clan rats. It's like it's a thing that I've got to do, like brush my teeth. Like I've got to do
Hmm.
it, right? But if I had to brush my teeth after every meal, I'd get tiresome of eating. So, like, and where I'm going with that random analogy is that okay, I will fight through a unit of clan rats once. I'll turn one, yeah, I'll soak it up and I'll kill 20 clan rats. But what I don't want to be doing in turn two and turn three is trying to go through clan rats while you got the Vermin Lord, Thankwell, you might have warp lightning cannons, you have storm vermin, you've got like rat ogres, you got all these other offensive things that I want to get into. I don't want to be wasting my combats against rat ogres, sorry, against clan rats.
For sure. And if you want a good yardstick, if you're doing well as Skaven, if you look in your dead pile and all of your clan rats are dead, but it's just clan rats, you're winning this game. Whereas if you look in your dead pile and I've got my Warbringer, my Thankwall, and I've still got 60 clan rats on the table, I'm screwed.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. That's my, as an opponent, the same thing, right? Like if I can kill those rat ogres and kill the master mauler that brings them back, if I can take down the warp lightning vortex, the warp lightning cannons, or the storm friends, or like whatever it is, if I can take those things down, I don't care about the clan rats. But what I don't
yeah,
want to be doing is being bogged down with clan rats, and that's all I've killed. That's just a waste of my combat phases or my shooting. Well, not my shootings, but you know what I mean. Like I don't
for
like it.
sure. For sure. Um, yeah. Other than that, we've got the Grey Seers on the list. I mean, they're just Grey Seers. They're great casters, double casters. They got a 3+ bodyguard and can't be shot at. So you can almost think of them as 15 health near clan rats. It can't be shot at. They are probably the most invincible casters in the game, in my opinion, if you think about it in that method. For 120 points to be, if you think about a 3+ bodyguard as being triple the wounds near clan rats, 120 points for a 15 health, can't be shot at caster.
It's
They
pretty
just don't
generous.
die.
It's very generous.
They just, yeah. So they're fantastic. You need two GCs right now in terms of tactics. Having the two Gracies and Thankful unlocks the triple master clan, which just gives you a ton of mobility options and access to very consistent deep striking. Again, without it, you're deep striking at a 50% rate of hitting. With it, you're deep striking at a 65, 75% chance of hitting your strikes. Yeah, we can jump to.
So
So
I just thought I put the Master Clan rules up as a reference point. So you're talking about always 3 claw steps ahead, right?
yeah, which is effectively says that when you do your first run, you get to share that run across your units, which is just nice for mobility. It's not a, I wouldn't take it for that reason, but it's just nice to have. The biggest one is when you do your first charge and it says it's unmodified, but you can re-roll it. Whatever that charge is, you can share that charge across your army. So what it means is if you're deep striking 3 or 4 different units in, you can charge with something that's not even one of those units, like make it the drill, generally speaking, and you can charge it and re-roll the charge, you've got a 50% chance of hitting a 9. If that's a 9, you hit every deep strike that turn,
Yeah.
or 9 or above. And even if it's not a 9, you can still then do one more charge per unit. And if you got Thankful there, you can issue the same command twice to make it 2 more charges for that unit. So one unit in particular will have a 75% chance of landing its strike. And then even further, if you can do it on going second, it means that you've got a 40% chance of taking the next turn. So 75% chance of landing the strike, and then a 40% chance, even if you don't land the strike, that you'll just walk in and slap them anyway. And suddenly you're looking at like that's gambling odds. That's 80%, 85%. And you bank a game on that. You go, I'm going in, 85% chance I'm hitting this, and you'll take those odds.
Kieran, it's 8:30 p.m. You're dropping too much maths for me. But it goes back, to the probability, right? Understanding
Mm.
numbers, understanding likelihoods. I don't think a lot of people have really looked at the maths. Like when you look at those 9-inch charges, for example, I think a lot of people get optimistic and hopeful and actually don't understand the probability of hitting it, then the probability of spending the command point. And you can see it as well when people spend a command point on all out attack to make something go from like a 3+ to a 2+. What's the likelihood and the improvement probability as opposed to doing it on something that has much more benefit, like bringing a 4 to a 3?
Yeah.
And that's through repetition. That's through using like calculators that help you understand the likelihood. And when we go into certain things, what's going to do more damage and where your better decision processes are going to happen. So I like that a lot, and I love the combination. And yeah, I mean, right now the Gracie is a great value, especially with clan rats in Galatian veterans.
Mm. Yeah.
Your Blake Cinceberos clearly slap. That's their role to go in and
That's what I do.
slap. They can deep strike. They can be running up the board. You probably like they do their thing.
Yeah, the only tech I will note here is against melee armies, I actually deep strike the clan rats and not the plague sensor bearers, so they can start on the table, so that I can hit them with a death frenzy or even two death frenzies, send them through a gnaw hole and do it that way. And clan rats in a warp grinder are hilariously better than people think. Again, because when you're coming out with a warp grinder, it's 3 inches long, and you can deploy clan rats wholly within 13 of the warp grinder. So you can make a 28-inch long line out of a warp grinder with clan rats, which can actually pin opponents in turn one and make it so they can't actually get to any objectives if they don't have flyers, which is hilarious. Um,
Yeah, that's crazy. That's absolutely, yeah, I love it. Oh, talk to me about the warp grinder. Am I going crazy, or like I don't recall seeing many warp grinders.
well, back in the old book, the problem with the warp grinder was when you came out of the warp grinder, it was some heinous rule that was like you roll a dice and on a one you die, like the cave collapses and everyone dies, or you took a bunch of mortal wounds when you came out. Now it's just you when you can take it to the side, you can then choose another unit to go with it when you do the other unit, and then it comes out. Also, warp grinder slaps. It is D6 attacks, threes and threes, Rend 2, damage 2. If you hit that as like a 5 or a 6, it hits harder than most heroes. The other thing with the Warp Grinder in particular as a tech piece for this list that's worth considering is when it comes out of Deep Strike with the Plague Sensor Bearers, because of the Master Clan challenge, you can guarantee that everything's going in. Why that's really specific is if you're charging these into sentinels, you're charging it into some sort of shooters, it or KO, it will block the Unleash Hell, take the Unleash Hell, and then the Plague Sensor Bearers get to go in without having any Unleash Hell hit on them. So it's not only a deep strike tool, it's an anti-Unleash Hell tech. Because it will block the Unleash Hell. And because of the Master Clan, it's the problem with normally is you'll send one thing in, it'll take the Unleash Hell, and then the other thing doesn't hit its charge, and you're like, oh, well, now I feel like an idiot because I took an Unleash Hell on my other thing, and my main thing didn't get in, and it's all ruined. I know when I hit that Master Clan that they're both getting in, so I can send one in after another to block the Unleash Hells.
Brilliant. I love it. I don't see the warp grinder enough, and maybe it's one of those items that you people have in their list, but then they drop it when they're over points, or it's just
Yeah.
something that you don't normally see.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that every list should have one, but it is one of those ones when push comes to shove and you're like, yeah, okay, I'll get rid of the warp grinder. I think it's also more because as obviously my list is a very melee dominant list. It is more of a melee focused thing. If you're running like a clan scryer, sit in the back and shoot them off the board, you probably don't need it. But because I am having to close the gap, especially against magic castles, it also lets the PCBs start underground, so they're not going to get shot at. So it is an anti-shooting, anti-castle tech. Um, yeah, that's probably all there is for that. It's a good little piece.
You got your Hell Pit Abomination. You've talked to like why is it better than its points value? Because you're right. Like now that I've played against it for the first time, um, I must admit it does way more damage, and it has way more. I mean, the only issue I had is that obviously it can't issue its own command, so you need someone to be around to babysit it. But outside of that, I was actually quite impressed with it for the 210 points.
Yeah. So one thing with the Hell Pit that is very often overlooked when you look at the book is it's 14 wounds on a 5-up save. That's pretty bad.
Mm.
However, for clan, actually, if you can jump to clan Molder for me,
All the
yeah, in the so
Yep.
with the clan Molder, another yeah, where are we here? Clan Molder. Okay, yep. So a lot of people think that it reads that if you have a master molder, you get to get a mutation. It doesn't say that. It says at the start of the game, you can choose a hell pit and give it a mutation. If you have 3 or more master molders, give them all a mutation. So what that means is you actually don't need a master molder to give it a mutation. So by default, you can actually have it at 16 wounds on a 4-up save. You don't need the molder. Which is why would they design it like that? I don't know. Send your messages to Games Workshop as to how they designed that
Law.
one.
Law, like you take your master molder for your rat ogres. Like I don't know if I'm taking 3 master molders just to
for
boost up the hell pit
hell pits.
abominations. Yeah.
But yeah, the way that it's kind of, because the way that most of the other ones are worded is, if you have one of something, you get this benefit. If you have three of this thing, you get this other benefit. That one actually is just, you don't even need a molder. You get the mutation. If you have three of the molders, you all of them get a mutation. So you can always give it the 2+ wounds, 1 more to armor. So suddenly one thing worth noting as well is it came down by, I think, 35 or 35 or 45 points in the last patch, which suddenly put it in the area of being an incredibly efficient trader. At 210 points, it's approximately 12 hits at 3s and 3s, Ren 2, damage 2. It's got different profiles, but that's a good average. So it's going to be able to do single target damage. It's got probably one of the best melee horde clears in the game, which is choose a unit, every model within 3 inches, roll a dice, 2 ups of mortals, re-rolling if you charge. It does bracket, but it still will, again, against smaller infantry things. Heals D3 per turn, ignores a spell on a 4-up. It is your unit where every army wants that thing that will contest the side objective. Like, you'll send it
Yeah.
over there, it'll have tree rev, something like that. In my opinion, I don't know of any other unit that can actually take on a hell pit one-on-one on a side objective. Like, there are units that can do it, but there tend to be 300, 400, 500 point blocks that have to do it. I don't know of any 200 point unit. There's no that I know of that could actually take it out, other than, like, I don't know, Sigvold or something like that. But then now we're picking very specific duelists. It will
Yeah.
take out pretty much anything at a 200 to 200 point value.
And it's taking that offense away from, again, your Vermin Lord, Thanquil, things like that. You can also put death frenzy on it, right? So it fights
Yep.
on death. Yeah. So you could like chuck it death frenzy on turn 1, force it up and go contest an objective. If you fight it, you're going to get to fight again. You do your death frenzy. If not, you've left it alone and you
Yep.
can go for
And
another turn.
And probably one of the most annoying things about the Hell Pit is often people will be like, great, there's your thing on its own. It's isolated. My battle tactic is kill the Hell Pit. When it dies, roll a dice. On a 5 or 6, it comes back to life with D6. And that ruins battle tactics more than you know. Like, it's so infuriating for so many people when it just comes back to life. And you're like, yep, here I am. Sorry, your battle tactic's out. I'm a monster. I'm still on the objective. It's my thing, and I'll hit you now, and your horde clearing back.
That happened to me, but they failed the dice roll, and I'm like
Ah,
you cheeky little bugger. Like, yeah,
it's
I'm laughing because that did happen to me, but I was lucky on the dice roll.
yeah, it's not something that you take specifically for that, but it's certainly a hell of a benefit. So that's really where the Hell Pit comes in. It is just that last trading piece. Also with Skaven, one of the biggest problems that we have is our bravery is like bravery 4, bravery 5 across the board. If you have too many things like your PCBs, your gutter runners, plague monks, and things like that, if you get hit with AoE damage or AoE spray, oh, sorry, area of effect for people who don't know, which generally in games is hitting multiple things in a zone or just putting like little bits of damage everywhere, you just trigger battle shocks across the board. Because it's a single model, it's not going to have to worry about battle shocks. It's got spell ignore. It's going to sit there and do its thing pretty well. The biggest gripe that people have with it is it's got random movement, which is inconsistent. Again, the whole point of Triple Master Clan is to bring consistency back into the inconsistent Skaven. So if I put it through a Norhole, it's got consistent charges. If I need to move it somewhere because of the Triple Master Clan, I've got a good chance of getting a 5 or a 6 shared on the run, which means that it's going to get consistent movement from the shared run.
Mm.
So it actually allows it to pay off that inconsistent part. And if you take away the inconsistency, it's just a damn good unit. Is it for every army? Probably not. I think it does more factor to Triple Master Clan, lots of melee stuff. But it's certainly not a on the shelf model by any means.
It's not an auto include, but it's a great little tech piece that I think has been a sleeper for maybe too long. I hope
Yeah.
maybe one day in the near future, Kieran, you and I could be talking again, and we talk about Doom Wheels being the sleeper unit that everyone should have been running. It's a
No.
staple of fantasy battles that I haven't seen on the table in Age of Sigmar. So I've been playing the game's been around for 7 years. I'm yet to
Mm.
see a Skaven player run the Doom Wheel, and it breaks my heart every time.
Look, there is actually some secret tech lists that spam the Doom wheels, and they're surprisingly better than you think. So if you search out there are Doom wheel lists. They are a real thing, and they're stronger than you think.
Do it. I want you to be the champion of the Doom Wheel. That's the meta that I want to live in.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about these other two endless spells, right? So Warp Lightning Vortex is pretty self-evident, right? It does a little bit of damage, it reduces, it's a debuff tool. It's great for
Yeah.
pinning. Like what I think for a lot of people that the price was too expensive and the range got shorter, which was
Sure.
the big thing, right? Like, and that's why it was KO's best endless spell until Spell in the Bottle
Yeah.
was only for universals. So talk to me about its inclusion, and then I want to hear why Vermintide is in this list.
Yeah. Okay. So what blinds? I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. It does mortals. It stops runs. Again, looking into tech, I was thinking going into Gits, and it's very good against Gits. Just lots of damage to all the smaller heroes. I would still take it even into it's just in my general list. Um, I do like it, especially combined with the Realm spell, Gears of Gur. Oh, Gears of Gur, I think that's what it's called. So what if people don't respect positioning near a gnaw hole? Or even not near in a hole, you can Skittle Leap a Gracier up, use 3 dice to drop Warp Lightning Vortex, and then use the second spell for grinding Gears of Gur. Warp Lightning Vortex, again, is going to the math of it. If you're in the center of it, on the turn it's cast, on average, you're taking about 4.5 mortals. Gears of Gur, on average, you're taking 2 mortals, which you add that up, you're killing pretty much every hero that's on that objective as an average. Now, it doesn't always work that way because they're both very, very spiky. Um, where I think Warp Lightning Vortex really gets oppressive is actually in combination with Vermintide. Because
Mm,
one, it stops running. Two, the way Vermintide works, it has a longer cast range than people think. It's got an 18-inch cast and then moves 7. So you're looking at a 25-inch projection from the cast. Um, Target unit within 3 inches. And on average, it's 13 dice, 6 is a mortal. So on average, let's just call it for the sake of it, 2 mortals to 1 unit.
yeah.
Where that's particularly useful is Warp Lightning Vortex. It says if you stay in this zone, you're going to take mortals and you're going to die, and you can't run, by the way. And then you get this thing called Vermintide that comes in that says, by the way, I'm going to block you from running out this way, and if you want to come out this way, you're going to take mortals running away, and you're also going to take mortals from the Warp Lightning Vortex as well. So it basically, between the two of them, it's a movement block, movement slow, high mortal wound thing. In most GCs, well, I guess yeah, most GCs are generally movement 5, 6, 7 ish. So if they can't run, they actually can't outrun the Vermintide. So
Yeah.
even if they get out of the Warp Lightning Vortex, Vermintide is just following them, blocking them where they want to go, and shipping down those heroes from range.
And
The the
it's a long base, right? Like if I remember,
it's
it's
it's the same size as the Warbringer. What is it, 120 by 90?
yeah.
And then it's 3 inches around that is where you're taking the damage. So it's surprisingly larger than people think. The other thing worth noting with Vermintide is again secret tech. I'll spoil for myself if anyone's coming up in a match, but to help all the other Skavens out, where it's useful because its range is so long. The biggest weakness to Thankful is people talk about redeploy. They say, oh,
Mm,
they redeploy back. You get a 5 or 6 on the redeploy and they're out of range. If you've got a horde, because Vermintide's a 25-inch cast with the cast and the move, I can put Vermintide behind your unit and then put Thankful to the front. Even if you hit a 6 on the redeploy, you can't get over the Vermintide.
yeah,
So
because you can move through, but you can't end on an endless
you
spell.
can't
So
end on it.
with
Mm. So you can actually position it in a way where the opponent can't move the horde through it, or not move enough of the horde that they're going to be out of range. At which point, Thankful's is going to, even if half the horde's in range, especially if they're 1 health each, Thankful will kill them. And so it's actually originally people were using things like Geminids to try to stop redeploys. I actually think Vermintide's a better option because not only does it stop redeploys, but it also has a ton of other uses as well, rather than just being specific for that Thankful play. Um,
and it's cheaper, right? I can't remember
yeah,
how much.
by,
Do
by
you have it
about
at
10
60
by about
points
10
now?
points. I think it's
Yeah.
50, yeah. So it's about 10 points cheaper. So that's really where it comes in. It's been one of the later additions to my list. It's been one of the surprise. I'm almost sad I didn't take it earlier. It has been good in pretty much every matchup except for Lumineth and KO. They're probably the only two matchups that don't really care for it that much. But every other matchup, it is a amazing spell, blocks movement, does mortals, hunts down GCs. Um, yeah, 10 out of 10. Love it. It also, I think before this book, not before this book, before the patch, I think it used to be 60 points and it came down by 20 points in a patch not too long ago, which is where it got its viability from. At 60,
So
at at 60, I wouldn't take it because like you're close to like at that point you're taking Jaws, you're taking Warp Lightning Vortex, Purple Sun. But when it got brought down to 40, it's 40 is very, very good now.
and it's obviously better than going for a triumph because obviously if you drop the Vermintide, you're at 1950, which puts you in a very good position for either the battle shock immunity, the reroll charge, or the +1 to wound, which might go quite well with Thankful or the Warbringer. That
Yeah,
value over the triumph.
I mean, my personal take, yes, but I can see the argument being either side. Also, again, knowing that I was very likely to face a Gits or two at Masters, I was thinking the Gits players are insane. Like I've seen some of them drop into like 19, 10 points to secure the triumph, but they're indomitable, which is insane. So I'm like, I don't want to neuter my points just for them to go even lower. And I'm like, well, damn it, I might as well have had the Vermintide at that point. So for me personally, I like having the Vermintide and not getting the Triumph, but I can appreciate the other side of the of the coin there for sure.
I've got a couple of listener questions I want to ask. And by the way, this has been great and it's obviously very helpful. And this worked for Keiran. Keiran has done incredibly well, but it's not to say that if you like your Storm Vermin, so your Storm Vermin, you like your Storm Fiends, you like your Lightning Cannons, and you Plague Claw Catapults, or like you obviously can run things that work for you and your style. I imagine some people might like more of a hammer, so maybe they do want an extra threat piece. But what I'm seeing here is a lot of tech in a list. I'm seeing a lot of movement shenanigans. I'm seeing debuffs. I'm seeing, while you don't have a lot of threats on the table, what you have is walls of troops denying, tactically pulling opponents apart with lots of different options. And yeah, if you grab this off the internet, I think a lot of people would just go, what on earth is going on here? Like, why
Yeah.
don't you have X, Y, Z? But talking to you kind of really understands the techiness of Skaven and why you do what you do.
I think something I learned from listening to a lot of your interviews with some of the the great players of the world as such is a lot of the best lists, they feel weak when you look at them from a net list perspective. But one of the things that you learn is it's about having variability and choice into different matchups. So a lot of the lists that are, easier to start with is it's one thing, this is what you do, but if you go against the counter, you're screwed. For the players that are, looking to run that high level of game, they don't have the option of if I get this matchup, I lose. It's not even in the vocab. They have to have a tool that deals with something in each instance. And a lot of this list is just about having a tool to deal with everything. The one thing that I'm missing is shooting, but there are Skaven books that do a hell of a lot of shooting. And if you look at the Skaven 5.0s from around the world, or even the 4.1s, I think I ran through it before, and I believe there's only 1 or 2 units in the entire Skaven book that hasn't been represented in a 5.0 list somewhere between this meta and the one before. I
Is it a
believe
Doom Wheel? Like the Doom Wheel? Like
Doom Wheel's
the
one of
no,
them.
what's the
There's
little one? There's the other, there's like Doom Wheel, and then there's also the little like
There's the
yeah.
warp flayer, I think it is. Warp flayer. I can't
Yeah.
even. See, here's the thing. It's so out of meta that even I can't remember what it's called right now. It's the melee weapon team. There's the Doom Wheel, and that's pretty much about it. There's a few other ones that are missing. But like for a book that has like 40 war scrolls, probably 75% plus of them do have viability. So don't by any means feel that like because I've got this in my list, this is the one true, holy gospel. It's not that case. There are other. I mean, even talking about your Discord server, we've got a great little community there. And what's really fascinating there is actually the variety of the lists that we have that are going for one. There's guys out there that are going all gutter runners. There's guys out there going. There is one madman running 3 Doom Wheels. And so there is a good variety in the book. So yeah, definitely none of the units are worth throwing out as such.
No, and that's where like you can bring in Eshin. Like I love is it Slinks, the
Yeah.
Underworld's warband. Like I love the mortal wound sniping abilities from the little ninja stars and some of the things that that brings. Right,
Yeah.
I've seen warp lightning cannon castles where a player in my community was running 3 of them plus a catapult. And just
Mm,
absolutely destroying you from range, and then the rest kind of just move up across the board. So yeah, Thankful
sure.
is popular, but it's not the only build. So, but I love hearing the way you've used it to make the most of your games.
Yeah, as I said, it's a meta call for right now, and hell, the next meta, Skaven's ready for when the next meta comes in. Thankful may not even be the piece anymore. It'll change to something else, and the list will completely warp around whatever's going to be required at the time. And it's a great book for the fact that I can do that, and I'm not just having to rotate to a new book.
And who knows what the Dawnbringer Crusade will bring to Skaven. I feel like Skaven is one that, especially with your battle tactics, I feel like they're a little bit too harsh on you and a little bit too
Yeah,
restrictive compared to what's come out this year. And who knows? Hopefully, some new rules and maybe some new units.
for sure, for sure. Trying to think new units. So we haven't had any new ones for some time.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to count the new assassin. Like, yeah, give yourself a new. Give me some more Eshin. Like, for me, what draws me to Skaven is Eshin, and I'd love to see more Eshin.
I think more Asian. I do think that the clan that has the least support is probably Molder. It kind of makes
Yeah.
me a bit sad that there's one Molder hero. It's a Master Molder, and he kind of just like whip, and that's that's the extent of his interaction in the game.
Hold on, hold
Um,
on. He has the 4-up. Bring back the rat ogres. Like, come on.
which is also whip. It's like he just sort of sits there and just whips things, and that's kind of it. So I do think there's definitely some love there that could be given to Clan Molder.
Yeah, I do agree. Moldad is lacking. Couple of burning questions that I had from the Discord that I want to ask is, what were some of the considerations for your Thankful deployment in the final game against Lumineth Realm Lords?
Yeah. Okay. So going into what we were saying before, one of the tricky things about LRL is that they have auto unbinds with Techless. So what I tried to do there was, and I'll describe it the best that I can, because with a Techless castle, they really want to be going second where they can, because if they can go second, they have the potential to double turn you, and in many cases, that's the game in itself. So they often want to push for second. So what I did was I set up the gnaw holes quite aggressively in a way that said, if you don't take first, I'm coming through these gnaw holes and I'm going to hit you. Because he had the one drop, I knew that if I set him to the side, he can't spread his castle because again, that will leave him vulnerable. So he has to stay tight. But by setting the gnaw holes there, he has to move up to the gnaw holes. Otherwise, I'm going to aggressively push through. So the idea there was to set up Thankful in a way where I knew that he was going to have to take the turn one, otherwise risking me being very aggressive and landing the alpha. And by when he takes the turn one, I wanted to set him up in a way where one pack of Sentinels might be able to hit him for some damage, but he couldn't get both packs of Sentinels in, because as I was saying before, you actually want Thankful to take some damage, because if he takes four or five damage in a turn, I'm happy, because I know that he's going to heal that back, and that's 5 damage that didn't hit something else. So,
Mm,
and then if you set him up too far back, the problem is I knew that he was going to move forward with Techless, and he was going to unbind Boat. Like, there is a world where he wouldn't have done that, but there's a reason why he's triple champion of the world. Well, triple champion of Australia. It's because he knows what he's doing, and he was always going to try to unbind that Boat. So I knew that I wanted to put him far enough back that he wasn't going to get absolutely nailed by 40 Sentinels shooting him turn one, can take some damage but heal it back, but then far enough forwards that when the boat gets cancelled, I'm not then having to spend too long running up the board to get to where I need to get, which is the other side of the board. So that was sort of the complexities around that. It was a very tricky matchup. I do think in hindsight, thinking back about that game, I did make some mistakes on deployment that did cost me quite a bit. But that's it's a very complex reason as to why I do think I should have had more Graciers further back away, so that while he could stop the boat, I could actually cast another boat from further away that would actually still be able to pick up Thankful to then take him in and force that Techless further forwards that then I can hit the counter charge. But again, that's a very specific question and line of thought.
no, I like it. I like it. And yeah, no, I appreciate it. And appreciate your honesty too. Like sometimes it's hard to talk and reflect and share what you did wrong, but there's always lessons in it. Uh,
Absolutely.
Skaven has a huge roster. How do you break your list building down into something more manageable? Maybe I'll follow on. Do you look at it at a sub faction level? And I know you don't have traditional sub factions, but do you try to build around and tick the box for 3 master clan and go for X amount of things, or do you try to get like 3 threat pieces? Like, how are you trying to build your list and construct these 40 odd war scrolls?
Yeah, okay. So the first thing is clan rats. I don't care what you're thinking, just clan rats. At least, ideally 60. I know people run 40. I'm telling you, 60 is the golden number. So you start there. I understand it is very hard with the number of war scrolls there is. I think when you're adding things in, you have to ask yourself, what is the job that they're actually being added in to do? Where you end up in a bad space is where you go, I have these, and you go, what's its job? It's to kill their chaff at the first turn of the game, and you get to the end of the game, and you go, it didn't actually hit their chaff. It just kind of sat there and did nothing. That's when you then take that out. One of the nice things with Skaven is I think the best way to build Skaven is just experience and playing the game. You play it and you go, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and you actually add. It's one of the few books where you can you can just take out a little bit, add a little bit, take out a little bit, add a little bit over time, and eventually you'll get to something that actually feels like it works for your particular playstyle. So I would say the way that I like to build things is I like to start with the strongest base I can, which, as I was describing earlier, I was like, you know what's a great unit? Plague Sensor Bearers. How about 40 of them? And then just Clan Rats and Greyseers and a Vermin Lord Warbringer, because I know the Vermin Lord Warbringer is good. So that is the most raw power you can get. From there, tech is important, but if you have too much tech, you actually don't have any power behind it. But it's easier to have more power and less tech than it is to have more tech and less power. So you start with high power, just strong war scrolls that are good. It's slow, it's clunky, it's kind of bad, but it's just raw beef. Then you go, okay, if I take out 10 plague sensor bearers and add in 2 deep striking things and some movement, it makes the other 30 a lot better. And you just keep doing that until eventually you'll reach a sweet spot somewhere between tech and power. But it's easier to start with power, especially as a newer player, because tech, if you don't use it correctly, actually feels like it feels weak if you don't know how to use it, where everyone can use power. Power is
Hmm.
obvious. You walk it up the board and you hit. But yes, that's how I build. Is I start with the most powerful thing I could in terms of just raw damage and health with no tech whatsoever, and then I'll slowly introduce tech. And it's a good exercise actually, because sometimes a thing seems useful, but you go, I like this thing, but do I like it as much as 10 more PCBs? Like when you ask that question, it's often a lot harder than just like you put all these pieces and you go, I built a list of all tech and I've got like one set of PCBs and that's all I've got left. Like on the other side, if you got 40 PCBs and you go, I like a warp lightning cannon, but do I like a warp lightning cannon as much as 10 PCBs, which is just raw damage and strength? Um, that's how I build it. Again, there are other champions out there. I know there's lots of other videos out there with regards to list building. That's my
No,
strategy.
no, it's great, and I want you to own it because it is great advice. But I will ask you, when you say do a job, what are the types of jobs you look for? So you've talked about raw power. Are you talking like offensive power? Are you talking about wound density? Like what are some of the types of jobs that you look for? And do you even have some numbers that you like? I always like to have at least 2 wound anvils that can soak up damage, hold an objective, and like, do you have any thoughts? And again, obviously meta dependent, battle plan dependent, but just help
Yeah,
me understand jobs.
yeah. So the different jobs you've got out there. So I think one thing you need in Skaven is you need one thing that's going to break screens. It's actually, ironically, as an army of screens, probably one of our worst things that we really struggle with. Rat ogres are probably the best example of that, of something that is fantastic at breaking screens. They come through the gnaw hole, they hit the front, they die, they come back, and then, or especially if you've got a death frenzy. But there's a job of, I need to break the enemy screen, because as much as I want to hit the deep strike on the Vermin Lord Warbringer or the drills, if the bubble's still there, the bubble's still there. And if I'm hitting a Vermin Lord into their chaff, I'm losing that game. So one job, if, for example, is what are you going to do to break their screens? Another job would be if they have a big threatening piece that's got 2 up armor save, what are you going to do about that? Now, in my list, I don't have that piece. So what I do is I run away. And that's my answer to it. Like, you don't necessarily have to have an answer for each thing, but if you don't have an answer for that high armor save, you need to know that you don't have an answer and have a plan accordingly.
So for example, and I say this a lot to people, is let's say Archeon, the big bad booty daddy himself. If
Yep.
you don't have enough damage to handle the 25 wounds on the ward save and the high movement, you're better off killing everything else because
Yeah.
Archeon can only be challenging one objective. You can be using your movement to go cap other things, score battle tactics, take out those units of Arangard, take out those units of knights and warriors or whatever it might be. And all the power is concentrated in one, and you could be just tagging, annoying, as you said, using your lines and screening and stopping that big pie plate. So it's a great piece of advice, and why retreating can be a very powerful tool as well. Like, you don't have to kill everything, and sometimes it's just easier to ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, Archeon's a great example where sometimes Archeon can do a lot of work, and then you look at the math behind it, and you go, actually, you beat Archeon. So if you can make it so Archeon over 5 turns kills 60 clan rats, 10 plague sensor bearers, a drill, and a grey seer over 5 turns, you beat Archeon because it didn't kill more points than he actually was worth. And you actually captured more objectives in the meanwhile, despite the fact it's still alive at the end of the game. It's still there. You didn't kill it, but you actually beat it just because you did your thing and it actually didn't kill more than it's worth. But yeah, if you can't kill it, especially with Skaven, because so much of our damage is glass cannon. If I hit into Archeon and I leave it on 3 health, it will then clear whatever I sent into it. And then if it's his turn next, he will then clear again. And suddenly that's when he's now okay. Now he's actually killing 1,000 points worth of stuff and getting the value that he's looking for. But yeah, so the different jobs are, yeah, like, again, castle breakers, chaff lines, objective holders. I'm a big fan of having a hammer that is like undeniable damage. Like, we're talking just ludicrous damage. Like, if you get hit by this thing, you're going to die. I don't want it to hurt. I want it to kill them. And plague sensor bearers are perfect for that. So yeah, and as I said, on this list I've got now, there's different things that do different jobs for different matchups. So it is a tricky thing to sort of work it all out, but that's there's lots of resources out there for helping to learn about these types of things.
Yeah, no, it is great, and I think that's the clear thing. Like, why am I putting it in a list? Like, I can't just build all the offense. I need something to be able to screen. Maybe you have the ability to move pre-game. Is there things that are going to help you come in from null holes? Are there things that are going to help you with your spell casting? There are people that do jobs and certain things where my job really is to get the boat out, and having an extra ability through the Gracia might actually help that. Like, there's lots of ways to look at things, but again, this game is one on movement, not on killing power. So
Yep.
always think about the movement and things like that.
Yep. No, for sure. As I was saying before, one of my mates who is just beating the crap out of me multiple times in a row. He's all about movement, and it actually took him beating me. I think I'm still seven losses against him, and I've never beat him. It's actually taken that for me to actually be like, okay, like, that's why I when I do things, I actually almost like, what would he do in this situation? And it's all movement tech. It's all movement tech. And it's taken a little while for me to actually learn and appreciate that. And once you see it, it's like, I get it. But it does take a little bit of time to actually appreciate why movement tech is so important in the game.
Yeah, 1000%. It's underappreciated, but you look at all the top players, and it's the skill that they know the most.
Yeah,
Probably the
agreed.
last question, Kieran, is I want to ask again, coming from the community, is there's a lot of value in vermin lords being tied up in their spells. With the new
Mm.
Seraphon arriving, do you think vermin lords will be worth it in a magic dom heavy meta?
I would argue yes, but I'll put in a bracket there, Vermin Lord Warbringer. The Vermin Lord Warbringer is he's a bit of an exception to the rest in that even without Dreaded Death Frenzy, if you can get it, it's gravy. But if you don't, he is still one of the best, like, points to damage wounds ratio of any unit in the game. He hits incredibly hard. Scurry Away is a hell of an ability. Again, we don't have the time to go into it, but it actually was probably the pivotal thing that won me my game one in Masters against Joel Graham. So I think even in a world where you got things like Seraphon being Magic Dom, I would still be taking a Vermin Lord Warbringer. I do think, though, because of the existence of Magic Dom, is why you've seen the Vermin Lord Deceiver start to fade a little bit more away. He's
Mm.
much more because you're bringing him not for his damage, you're bringing him for dreaded Skittle Leap. And in the world where you got Techless and Auto Unbinds, if they unbind that Skittle Leap, you've got a 430 point support piece standing there not doing a lot. And he hits hard, but he doesn't hit 430 points hard. Where the Vermin Lord Warbringer is I always like when I'm rolling the dice, people are like, "Are you done? Are you sure you're hitting for this hard?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did hit you for 28 wounds. That is correct." Like,
Yeah, the Warbringer can slap. Like when I've played against it, it's always about getting that Warbringer down before combat. Like, and I'm lucky because again, the last couple of games I've been playing has probably been with Stormcast. So I've got my Judicators, I've got my long strikes, and I see that thing, and I got to get it off the board. Thankful, I can't stop. It's almost like cool, limit the damage that Thankful and then go in. But with the Warbringer, I just need to neuter that, and you're showing why it's such a powerful tool. And maybe the other thing as well is I find people they don't use finest hour as early as they should. They kind of almost hold it back. And like
yeah,
against like Dave Kerr, for example, a very shooting army, if you know a smart player is going to try to take out your key tool, Thankwell Vermin Lord, put a distraction piece down and put a finest hour up, because
yeah,
between that and then obviously all that defense, you've got a much better chance of survival. Burn it if it has like I think ogres taught us that lesson with the four cannons. Like just chuck up that finest hour, burn it every time you can, and it limits the damage.
yeah, for sure. As I was saying, the times where I lose with Skaven is when my guys die before they're meant to. And the greatest thing with the Warbringer is a great example of that. If you can choose when he's going to die because you've got dreaded Death Frenzy, he is one of the best traders in the game. If you have him on just one health, and you put one or two Death Frenzies on him, you send him into like Fulminators, you clear him. Like, I don't care how many there are, they're gone. So he's a great example of like, yeah, definitely keeping him alive is important. Use the finest hour earlier than you need it. There's nothing worse than when your guy dies by one health and you're like, should have used finest hour, and now it's like, well, it's too late now. He's dead. So definitely, especially as a note, if you're going into a shooting army like a KO or something like that, or a IDK, you know that they're going to shoot at you. It's not even like a will they shoot at me? They will shoot at you. Like, it's not even a question. Like, and hell, if you use a finest hour and they go, oh, I used finest hour and they didn't shoot at him, fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted. So
And that's exactly my point, is that sometimes using it can be enough of a distraction to stop your opponent going, well, I was going to try to take out that Warbringer, but now because you've used finest hour, I know you can all out defense, but that plus two to your save is just not worth it for me. So
yeah,
you know what? I'll target something else. Great. That's all I needed, because now I can slap you back.
exactly. So yeah, definitely use those finest hours early.
Kieran, is there any final advice you'd want to give a Skaven player? I was about to say KO just because we were talking about KO. But as a Skaven player, for someone who's had success like you have and been playing it for as long as you have, very focused, is there any final advice you'd want to share that we haven't already discussed in the last 2 hours?
I guess if there is any advice, I'd definitely say seek out other Skaven players, because Skaven is an army that has a lot of very secretive tech. It's not obvious how to play them. It's not obvious how to deploy them. It's not obvious how you should be screening out and doing lots of things. And it's something that will, if you speak to other Skaven players who are doing well, it will be they'll be able to help you. And this community, AOS so far has had a fantastic community where I've never asked anyone for help and they've been like, no, that's my secret tech. How dare you? Like it just doesn't happen. And so definitely, the only advice I would give is just reach out to other players, see what they're doing, and learn from other players. I do think as well, one of the best tips I can give is try to watch some really high tier matches, because you'd actually be surprised when you watch it. You're like, why are they even doing that? Why? And then understand why they're doing it. Why do they deploy like that? Why are they setting up like this? Why are they setting up like that? Like, why this particular list tech? It will teach you a lot about the game. As well as yeah, just getting out there, talking to people, learning from your mistakes. As we said before, if you lose a game, it's okay. Just understand why you lost, what the math behind it was, and pick it up and go from there. That'd be my last piece of advice as such.
I will say, like watching battle reports, whether they are top tier, because top tier players, it's hard to watch all the time, right? And we're
It
lucky
is.
that Worlds is coming up soon, and there are some really good top tier, like Season of War, for example, great channel that are focused very on the heavy competitive side. But
Mm,
also watching people who are more casual actually can teach you a lot. And it's not that what they do is on the table, but it's what they don't do. And it's like that critical thinking to say, well, if I was in this position, I wouldn't have done this, or I would have put the null hole here, or I would have held this back. And that actually in itself is a skill of critical analysis that can help you be a better player. So even if you can't watch the top players,
for
looking at
sure.
other players, that can help a lot. So um,
No,
love it. I love your reflectiveness and your analytical approach, because you know what? Sometimes we lose and it sucks, but it's like, well, what can I do differently next time? So, and when we're at a tournament, we get that instant feedback that we can instantly implement. But if I'm only playing once a week or once a fortnight, I get that feedback. I can't do anything with it for another week or two. So,
mm,
that's why I love competitive games. And that's why I like to play like multiple, even like your local store that might have 2 or 3 games. You can
mm.
immediately put the feedback through and stress test the list.
Yeah, I think on that note, over the last year, I've probably played 80 to 85% of my games are actually at tournaments, either being 1 days or 2 days. For exactly that reason, it's a great way to condense it down to a nice short period. You can actually make a mistake, learn from it, move it to the next game. And like I remember, especially in the early days, by the end of the tournament, I was a different player to where I was at the start of the tournament, which is a weird thing to say, but it definitely holds true. Where even in a single day, you're like, wow, it's like if you were to play yourself at the start of the day, you'd smash them. You'd absolutely knock them off the table.
Well, it happened to me recently where I was playing with my sons. I picked them up for the first time in like 4 months, and I played Slanesh, and it didn't go as well as it should have. But I
Mm,
then went on a winning streak, and I'm like, man, if I would have played Slanesh again, I wouldn't have played like a potato. Like I wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have done that, and even an army that I know intimately, there's that repetition and being in the game and playing with your toys that you learn so much through the process. So, and I hope in the last 2 hours people have learned through your process and your skills and your experience, because you've brought a lot to this discussion. And uh, while this is not the one and only way to play Skaven, I hope this has given people some ideas, some thoughts, and some ways to maybe tweak and to look at the Hellpit Abomination, to consider that Vermintide, and not just take the top lists off the internet, but actually look at the play style, the list options, and try something different. And if it doesn't work, cool, you can drop it. If it does work, you're getting ahead of the meta, which I absolutely love.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Um,
Kieran, anyone you want to shout out? Anyone you want to say hello to? You've casually danced around the name of your it sounds like your long term rival that you're now gonna defeat. They beat you 7 times in a row with your movement, but you're gonna get them
he's
next.
he's a good mate. He's a good mate of mine. Oh, look, I mean, the AOS community in Australia is just it's a lovely community. There's lots of different players here that have helped me to being where I am. So in terms of particular shout outs, I mean, just the entire. I mean, I've mainly played in the Victorian ecosystem, but the entire Victorian ecosystem for AOS is just a fantastic learning environment. Between you've got the Miscast crew, you've got I mean, even the AO, you've got the different crews. You've got Miscast, which is where my club's mainly from. But I spend a lot of the times with the guys out in Bendigo in the bush side, Ballarat, Geelong. The South Australian crew have been a lovely crew as well to be with. Model Citizens. Biggest shout out though, probably my partner. For everyone who knows me in the AOS community, my partner Jo, she literally comes to every single tournament. She's been to more GTs than probably any other player in Australia other than me. So definitely, love the support from her in terms of just being there. Plus, final shout out. Not trying to plug your own stuff, but the AOS Coach Discord server. There's always great things on there. We always beef on with regards to if you just mention in there that you think the Screaming Bell is a viable unit, and you'll start a war every time. So
I do want to
Yeah.
say one thing. I want to go back to one thing you said around asking for list construction and feedback. And I think one lesson, because I get a lot of people whinging at me, and they're like, "Oh, they just whinge all the time." People like to whinge, but I
Yep.
find one thing is that when people have a idea in their mind, when you ask for feedback, it's always helpful to actually say what you're looking for. Like if you love Scryer and you have a dream of running 3 lightning cannons and you want to have all the Jezzails and you want to have 100% Scryer army, competitively it might not be the best. But if you go in and say, hey, and this is whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Reddit, whether it's on Discord, you're like, hey, I really want to focus heavily on this type of build. I know it might be not the most competitive, but what advice would you give me? Like, what could I tweak that gets me like towards how I want to play? Or I like to play things with lots of monsters, or I want to run a horde style. And yes, I know the Grey Seer on Screaming Bell no longer has a Battleshop community, but how can I run this type of army that I want to run? And that context can actually get you a better outcome. Because otherwise,
Yeah.
what you just get all the net list stuff. Why don't you have Thankwell? Why don't you have this? It's like, well, because I don't want to.
I think as well as that, providing a specific question or a specific thing you're looking for, and this takes a certain level of self-reflection in your game, where you get to the end of it and you don't say, "This is my list. What do you guys think?" You say, "This is my list. Look, I'm really struggling with Beast Claw Raiders. I don't know what to do because every time it's turn 2 and I'm dead and I don't understand what's going wrong." Like that's something we can actually provide advice on and say, "Well, look, are you screening your things out? Have you considered this? Have you considered that?" So people can help with a specific question. There's nothing worse than this is my list. What do you think? It's like, well, if it's your list and you like it, then whatever. Like, I'm not going to go in there and tell you that your favorite units are bad. Like, if you like
Yeah,
them, kudos to you. But like, if you want help, understand what are some of the things that you need help with, and is that something that you actually need to self-reflect on, even if it's just a case of this is what I seem to be struggling with. And then people can provide advice that, like, again, I know I harp on about monster trucks, but that's mainly because when I started, I kept getting dumpstered on by monster trucks, and I was like, "This is the most overpowered army in the game. How do you beat this? It just charges at you and beats you up. What do you do?" And it actually took me properly like asking the right questions to understand why it's strong, but then also how you can beat it. And rather than just complaining it's too strong, be like, okay, it is strong. I still stand by it's a good army, but it does have weaknesses. What can you actually do to beat it? How can you play against it? And then playing to those odds. And eventually you realize that actually now I'm on the other side. I'm kind of like, I actually reckon we're better against monster trucks and I have a better chance of beating it than they have Skaven. So yeah, just asking the right questions for feedback and specifically for what it is that you're struggling with is where you'll get the most assistance.
I love it. I love it. Kieran, are you on socials at all? Like, are you on Twitter or I know you've mentioned my Discord, but are you active anywhere else? If people want to chat Skaven with you?
I mean, probably my Facebook is the only one. I will, if someone wants to chat Skaven, I will actually let you talk to me on my Facebook, but that's if you want to. It's a bit strange. The best place to probably reach me is the AOS Coach Discord server. That's probably the only place where I'm active, like in a more public forum active. But on
I
the
swear
most
that
part,
wasn't set up. I wasn't set up, by the way. I swear I
yeah,
had
he's
no
not.
idea
He's not.
when I asked that question. Like, I swear that wasn't set up.
No, he's definitely not. But that's, I mean, I'm a bit of a troglodyte. I basically I don't even have Instagram. I definitely don't have. Actually, I do have TikTok now, but that's only because my partner sends me TikToks and I need to watch them.
They're
But
pretty good. TikToks are pretty good, man. Like
they're,
you fall
they're
down a
pretty
trap.
funny.
Like they're
Yeah.
like Vines 2.0. Like it's just so good.
Where are the Warhammer TikToks at? That's what I need to find. But
There's some, but there's not enough.
not enough, not enough. That's my next content creation. I'm gonna do that. I'll start some more TikToks. But yeah, so basically, yeah, if people really want to reach me, probably on Discord's the best place. But again, I'm still not super active there. But if you send a message, I'm more than happy to have a chat, take a look through some questions and answer what I can. And that's probably the best bet. Yeah.
Awesome. Kieran, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your insights. It was a great chat. And I hope, Skaven people, you have some new ideas, some new tactics, some things to try on the tabletop based off Kieran's experience. And again, shout out for getting to the grand final of the Australian Masters, especially for someone who's only been in the game now for 12 months, kind of on the dot. So credit to you, credit to your analysis, your commitment to the game, commitment to Skaven, because I think a lot of people labeled you as the Dark Rat. Like when they saw your name and they're like, okay, well, there's the Joel McGraths, the Joel Grahams, there's the Matt Tyrrells, the Michael Clarks, the David Kerrs. They're like, okay, they're the ones who will probably be in the finals. But you come up from the Under Empire and you shook up the Masters scene for the better.
No, for sure. Look, and it very easily could have been the Slaves player I played. He was also one of the lower ranked players of the tournament. He did the same thing. He absolutely whipped through, and he deserved to be in that final podium as well because that was a hell of a game 3 between the two of us. So
Terrence? Was that Terrence?
Terrence, yeah, hell of a player. And so he definitely that was probably one of the best matches I've ever played to date. So a very lovely man as well, which is probably the best compliment you can give in the game of AOS is you enjoy playing the game with someone. So yeah.
All right, well, let's wrap this up. Thank you so much. You know what to do, folks. Like, subscribe, comment. Let me know in the comment section. Is there things that maybe you would consider, or maybe some things that you're finding in the current General's Handbook that are a little bit of a secret sauce maybe we should be exploring? We shared the Hell Pit Abomination. We shared the Skaven Tide. But is there some other things that are working in your favor? You know the deal. Comment section. Thank you so much. And let's wrap this up.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AOS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a double 1 on a spellcast.